set a record as the most powerful rainbow in U.S. history, with at least 30 confirmed fatalities and damage estimates in the billions. The vividly saturated colors seared through homes and roads, charring everything in its path. Those exposed to the rainbow's fury say they're lucky to be alive.
The sky was completely blue. All of a sudden, it's filled with brilliant hues of red and indigo.
All I can say is when I was a kid, rainbows didn't cut people in half.
Meteorologists say that Percival is just the latest in a pattern of increasingly dangerous rainbows, and that they're only growing stronger as global temperatures rise. Percival also comes on the heels of some extreme weather phenomena overseas. Authorities in the Philippines are still searching for thousands in the aftermath of mega sunset Wilma.
This is the Onion News Network.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Hey, what's up, all of our liberty-loving friends? This is another fantastic episode of Liberty at Night with Nate and Charlie on the Free Talk Live network, coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee. The Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash with fees of less than a penny per transaction. Dash is made for spending. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol and the multi-crypto wallets. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month for this sponsorship. It's easy to get and use Dash. You can learn more at dash.org. That's dash.org. And of course, right now, we are called Free Talk Live. We're not called Free Talk Live. We're called Liberty at Night on the Free Talk Live network. And by the way, every single day of the week, we do a show by a different name, and that's Good Morning Liberty, which you can find on your favorite podcast app by searching Good Morning Liberty. That's the best way to do it. You can also watch our videos on YouTube, Rumble, used to be Spotify, not anymore, and also Odyssey. So go and do that. And you can also join the Fed Haters Club. Join gml.com. GML, not Gmail, gml.com. Little as $7 a month if you want to. You don't have to do that. But if you want to be part of the show, hear us, the people that we chat with, every single episode, you're going to go join gml.com. So we got cabinet picks. And I will tell you about something that went terribly wrong for me. The main thing we'll be talking about here is that we didn't seem to get any libertarian cabinet picks. And I was there. I was in the room when Trump said that he was going to put a libertarian in his cabinet and at Senior Post. So
now somebody said they went back and rewatched the speech, and that he said if you give him the nomination.
If you give him the nomination. Now,
of the Libertarian Party.
That sort of was said.
So
it sort of was said in that. There is a little bit of a carve out in there.
A deal's a deal, and the Libertarian Party didn't hold up their end of the deal.
I do remember that being part of it.
That is why I'm committing to you tonight that I will put a libertarian in my cabinet and also libertarians in senior posts.
Okay, there's that. Now, I do have to tell you.
It's hard to tell if he did a capital L or a small L.
That's exactly what I was about to say. You couldn't hear it, but he said it with a big L. And so technically, he did it. He said it with a big L. So everyone, I'm being facetious right now, okay. Everyone who's super worried about big L libertarianism and Libertarian Party and the party is the most important thing, well, guess what? He put a libertarian in his cabinet, or he at least nominated one, because RFK Jr. is a lifetime big L libertarian. He's a member of the party. Mm-hmm. And membership of the party in the Libertarian Party, well, that's all that counts, right? Not the small L. It's not the small L. It's the name. It's the name that matters, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, that's not the case. And clearly what all of us wanted was a small L, someone who is a libertarian, to be in the cabinet.
But what kind of libertarian? Are you talking like a Josh Eckel libertarian?
I'm talking about a libertarian.
Like a Dave Smith libertarian?
No, I'm talking about a real libertarian.
Like who?
Well, that's a great question because there aren't any.
Who's a real libertarian?
It doesn't matter who he could have put. He could have put Chase Oliver in there, half the libertarians would have said, well, I thought he was going to put a libertarian in his cabinet, you know? Or he could have put Dave Smith in there, and half the libertarians would have said, I thought he was going to put a libertarian in his cabinet.
Exactly. That's
So
my
it's
point.
actually an impossible thing. But what's also I've sort of skipped over a whole bunch of stuff here, but what's also very important is that for us, for the people you're listening to right now, immediately after he made this promise, I was doing interviews with people making fun of the fact that he has no clue what a libertarian is not a principled guy whatsoever, and that I did not trust his promise to put a libertarian in the cabinet at all. And he kept talking about this writer, this author through this whole speech. The guy's name was D. Roy something. I can't remember the guy's last name. We were calling him Leroy Jenkins all night. But his name was D. Roy.
D. Roy Brown?
And it was just a guy who wrote an article about why libertarians should support Trump. Not a libertarian guy at all. But he was talking about this dude was Ron Paul all night. He might as well have been quoting, Mises all night because he saw one article about why libertarians should support Trump, which they used as the outline for his speech at the convention. And so when I heard him, he kept talking about this dude. I was like, we're not going to get a libertarian in the cabinet. He has no clue what a libertarian is.
Also, I can say that that's not the reason I voted for him.
No, I mean, we're on record many times saying that this happens, doesn't happen, don't care whatsoever. Mm. And so that at least we're good.
And I can tell you, I don't know if you brought any of this in there. One of the main reasons I voted for him was to stave off World War III.
Mm.
So
at least the Russia-Ukraine part.
Hopefully
not the Israel.
Let me be more nuclear about it.
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to stave off a nuclear war.
Yeah.
So things seem to be going a little sideways over there.
Well,
in the eastern region.
Well, not by his doing yet. But
no, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, before he gets in the office, It seems that you have a lame duck president or someone else making crazy decisions. But that's not. I didn't vote for Trump because he promised to put a libertarian in the cabinet. Now, would I have liked to see someone like a Thomas Massey, who's a Republican,
which
by the way,
is hilarious.
Yeah,
because a bunch of the libertarians that are complaining. And of course, saying like, "Oh, you supported the duopoly, and you did, you couldn't have voted for Trump and all that." If he would have put Thomas Massey in there, they would have been like, "Oh, we got a libertarian in the cabinet."
Yeah, right.
It's just,
or I'd love to see a Ron Paul, also Republican, by the way. Rand Paul, Republican. Or obviously a guy like Dave Smith or somebody like that would have been nice, but. It's just, I think, let's say positions of power, not that they have any real power, but, a guy like Vivek having something to do with potentially with, reining in federal government spending, that's a good thing.
Yeah. And when I was thinking about my definition of libertarian, if he said Thomas Massey, we would all know that we would think that was a great appointment. We would count that probably as a libertarian, and most of us would agree with that, even though he's a Republican. And so I was thinking, paraphrasing the Supreme Court justice when I say, I can't tell you what a libertarian is, but I know it when I see it. And so you would know that Thomas Massey is that person. Vivek, I would say, is about the closest in the administration, technically. And to me, it's how do you make decisions? Do you make them from the first principle of self-ownership or private property rights or individualism, things like that? Vivek might not be all the way there, but he's about the closest I've seen in this administration to being a guy who, when he thinks about a decision, he thinks about your individual rights first off, and that's really what that's really how I think about what a libertarian is, and that kind of counts for me. He made some picks, and I'll tell you about one that has almost pushed me over the edge here in a bit. Mm-hmm. We will see, because it's actually I didn't expect anything really great from this, all these cabinet picks. I expected some bad also, but somehow this one is not one I was really expecting. But let's go through a little bit of this Axios article, and they're talking about Trump's liberal cabinet. Nothing captures the dramatic ideological transformation of the Republican Party more vividly than Trump's proposed cabinet. They got a pro-abortion rights Kennedy running HHS, a pro-union centrist running Labor, a former elected Democrat for DNI in Tulsi, a former George Soros advisor in the Bessent, I think, Scott Bessent for Treasury. And we'll go through a little bit of these. For Treasury, Scott Bessent will bring deep knowledge of bond and currency markets and a close relationship with Trump, as well as a surprising connection to hedge fund manager George Soros, mega donor to liberal causes and boogeyman to the political right. For Labor, well, let's talk about a couple others before we talk about Labor. How about FDA? This one was okay as far as I can tell so far. Marty,
also, by the way, Scott Bessent is a openly gay, married to a man with kids, and
okay.
This will be the highest appointment ever
for a gay.
For a gay,
huh.
So yeah,
well,
Trump hates the LGBTQ.
Well, he does definitely.
So
I saw plenty of stuff about Bessent, and no one had told me that a very important, vital knowledge that he was a gay man.
Yeah.
Which I'm actually surprised that I hadn't seen that anywhere. But for FDA, Marty Makary, a surgeon and author who gained prominence on Fox News for his contrarian COVID views. So that's an interesting one. I believe I've seen Marty Makary say some good things before. Let's see. Nominated Marty Makary to lead FDA, selecting a surgeon and author who gained national attention for opposing vaccine mandates and some other public health measures during the COVID-19 pandemic.
That sounds good.
Professor at Johns Hopkins University declared the U.S. health system broken, vowing a shakeup. Let's see, where else do we go? Makary's views align closely. Some of them align closely with the man who is poised to be his boss, RFK. In his books and articles, Makary has decried the overprescribing of drugs, the use of pesticides on foods, and the undue influence of pharmaceutical and insurance companies over doctors and government regulators, points that Kennedy has also harped on for years. There's some good and some bad in there. Once we actually get to things that they're doing, I'll break out some of my thoughts on pesticides and genetically modified crops and stuff like that. It won't be a shock because we mentioned them several times over the years. But once they actually get to making decisions on things, then we'll actually talk about those and not just be all speculation. All right, how about this, though? Trump picks Congresswoman Lori Chavez DeRemer,
don't care,
as Labor Secretary. We're just going to call her Lori Chavez.
Lori Hugo Chavez.
President-elect Donald Trump. Go ahead, Charlie. I've been reading this whole time.
All right. So Donald Trump said he will nominate outgoing U.S. Representative Lori Chavez DeRemer to lead the U.S. Labor Department, choosing a Republican whose unusually pro-union record has rankled some of his business allies.
You know, I haven't seen the word rankled used very often lately, and I'm glad we're finally getting back to it.
Thanks, Bloomberg.
Yeah.
Chavez was one of the few Republicans to co-sponsor sweeping pro-union bills, including the PRO Act, which would restrict union-busting tactics and make it much harder for companies such as Uber to classify staff as independent contractors rather than employees. If confirmed, she'll be charged with managing Trump's relationship with labor after the Republican was able to make inroads with union voters during the 2024 campaign. Teamsters president Sean O'Brien appeared at the Republican National Committee, and his organization ultimately declined to endorse a candidate despite years of support for Democratic politicians. So this is probably a deal with the Teamsters.
Well, look at the first line here.
O'Brien publicly championed her for the job. Quote, the president-elect has nominated a unicorn, a genuine pro-labor Republican, said Seth Harris, who served as acting Secretary of Labor under President Barack Obama and is now a professor at Northeastern University. This is about the best nomination for the Labor Department that Democrats could have hoped for. Even under Democrat?
Yeah.
Still, he added, we don't know if she's going to be given the freedom to carry out the agenda that she supported in Congress. Her record has drawn concern from business advocates with the Coalition for a Democratic Workplace, whose members include the U.S. Chamber of Commerce.
Well, let's read some stuff about the PRO Act.
Okay.
Yeah, let's just do it. So, for the essence of time here, I don't know how many times I've said this, but this co-sponsored the PRO Act, which I consider to be the most dangerous single piece of United States legislation that I have seen since FDR was rolling around in the White House. Okay? It is the most disgusting piece of law that I've ever seen because it cuts directly against the idea of
freedom,
private property, liberty, freedom, all of those things. But since it's against businesses, those evil businesses that make money and employ people, then I guess it's not all that bad. But that is a dangerous, freaking socialist, communist, Marxist idea for people to say, well, it's just against businesses, so who cares? Oh, yeah, they just provide every single thing that we all use on a daily basis at all times, and we'd all die if we weren't getting those things. Most people would. And so it's a absolutely disgusting piece of legislation, and this is very dangerously close. I have to think about it. I'm on like no sleep right now. I had an insanely busy weekend, and I was shocked when I saw it. This is very dangerously close to having me break into whatever office they store our votes, take all those people hostage while I find mine, and change it without anyone noticing and disposing of the evidence afterwards because I'm so freaking disgusted by this pick.
What would you change your vote to? Kamala?
None. I just delete it, I guess. I know it's kind of...
The Live Group is asking if she needs to be confirmed, and if
she'd
so...
be confirmed. She's going to get Democrats.
Then there's no way she should be confirmed. I don't think she's going to have any trouble getting confirmed.
No, she's going to get confirmed.
It might be unanimous.
Unions are the biggest donors to politicians that exist.
Yeah.
They just don't count them when they talk about corporations donating to people. You see the numbers that unions donate to people? It's ridiculous. Yeah, she'll be confirmed, no problem. Because she's going to get Democrats to vote for her. All the other ones are going to be, can they get all 52, 53, I don't remember what the number is, Republicans. She's going to get people from across the aisle to vote for her. Sean O'Brien is going to be out there making sure Democrats vote for this person.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, she's in. I hope I'm so wrong about this. I'll eat half this notebook if I'm wrong about this. I'm gonna have to put it on a little strip of paper. You heard it here first.
Mm-hmm.
The Protecting the Right to Organize Act. So check this out. PRO Act introduces the ABC test for determining employee status. This takes the law from California that was so unpopular, they had to vote again a couple years later to change it. It takes the law from California and then makes it a national law to reclassify independent contractors. Yeah. To reclassify independent contractors as employees. It effectively destroys Uber, Lyft, DoorDash,
my company,
Postmates, what Charlie does for a living. Tons of people. I mean, there are, I don't know how many. God, there's 20 million independent contractors who work for the U.S. government. I bet they're exempt.
Probably.
I'm sure they'll be exempt. But I don't know how many independent contractors there are out there. But there's little things like if you set some kind of criteria, like if, let's say Uber says, well, you need to do a good job, or we're not going to hire you for this. Well, if you do that, this law says, well, that's an employee. That's not an independent contractor. So you, when you're looking for independent contractors, can't take under consideration whether or not someone does a good job at the job. That makes them an employee. Absolutely ridiculous. Mandatory disclosure of private information. The act would require employers to disclose personal information like home addresses, phone numbers, and email addresses of employees to union organizers so they could better organize. This mandate might be viewed as a violation of the privacy rights of business owners who wish to protect their employees' private information. Nullification of right to work laws. By the way, I did use Grok to simplify this for us, and I wanted to point out that the source for this one is us. You can see our profile photo right there. So don't worry, this one's been fact-checked.
We know this one's right.
This one's correct, just so you know. Nullification of right to work laws. By effectively nullifying right to work laws in 27 states, the PRO Act could be argued to infringe on the rights of business owners by compelling them to engage in collective bargaining, even if they prefer to operate in the non-unionized environment. It also takes the rule that if you work in a unionized workplace and you don't want to give money to that union, it overturns that. Now, I don't know if all this stuff is constitutional, because that was actually decided by a Supreme Court case. Okay. Limiting the right to hire. PRO Act could potentially limit business owners' right to choose their workforce by reducing their ability to hire independent contractors. We know that. It also says that you can't replace striking workers, all sorts of crazy stuff. You have to allow union organizing to occur in the workplace. You cannot say that you can't organize a union on our property. That's illegal
someone else's property.
It's property rights. It's whatever. We're not going to spend the whole day on the PRO Act. In fact, I'm going to release a couple of the episodes that we spent talking about this. It's not good. A bunch of the conversation that occurred last night in the space, I believe, was spurred by, I saw this comment going around all over the place, retweeted by Dave Smith, a bunch of people. And so it had to do with Pam Bondi, the new AG, being a major advocate for red flag laws.
Pan?
Yeah, Pan. It's Pan. It's two. Yeah.
Pan.
It's MN. Yeah.
Not
There's two
Pam?
M's. No, it's Pan Bondi.
Pan. Okay.
The new AG appointment. I decided I'm going to call her Pan. Okay.
All right.
So I'm going to call her
Pan.
Major advocate
Like
for red
bread.
flag laws.
Pan, like bread.
Yes. Just like
Okay.
that. Now, the issue here is this shouldn't come as a shock to anyone because Trump himself was clearly in favor of red flag laws.
And banning bump stocks.
Yeah, we know the bump stock thing, but the red flag laws to me are way more concerning. He's got a quote of him saying, we're going to take the guns first, due process later. Like, we know that. He said that. So that seems like that's already entered into your calculus for if you still decided to vote for Trump. Because what was your alternative? Yes, I'm making the lesser of two evils argument right now. What do you guys think about our lesser of two evils argument? Did you make the same decision this year? Is it not really lesser of two evils? Because we happen to think there was a clear, very clear difference between the two options that we had this year. Let us know. Send us an email, charlie@goodmorningliberty.us. Send us an email at charlie@goodmorningliberty.us, or find us on X under the handle Good AM Liberty. Remember, that's Good AM Liberty because we have a daily show called Good Morning Liberty. Even though we're called Liberty at Night right now, Good Night Liberty would have sounded too sad, they said, even though it's very fitting, in my opinion. Coming right up, we're going to finish this conversation about the cabinet picks and the libertarian decision to vote for Trump. Coming right up on Liberty at Night.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks, Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. The Israeli Security Cabinet has approved a ceasefire deal with the militant group Hezbollah in Lebanon after it was presented by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It represents a major breakthrough in efforts to avert a wider war in the region. Netanyahu said the ceasefire is necessary to refocus attention on the Palestinian militant group Hamas in the Gaza Strip and the threat posed by Iran. The United Nations has ordered the evacuation of some of its key staff from Haiti as clashes between armed gangs and the police intensify. In the last few days, the UN has reported a major escalation of violence in the capital that's left scores dead and thousands displaced. Jody Jacobs reports from the United Nations in New York.
The main international airport in Port-au-Prince has been closed after commercial flights were hit by gunfire while landing and taking off earlier this month. Most foreign embassies are now also closed. Some 400 UN-backed security teams are on the ground, comprising mostly of Kenyan police. But this has done little to quell the tensions. The Haitian government, backed by the United States, is now calling on the UN Security Council to authorize a full-scale peacekeeping operation, a move opposed by Russia and China.
US health insurance could soon have to offer coverage of weight loss drugs under proposals from the Biden administration. The new rules would force Medicare and Medicaid, that's state and federal insurance programs, to provide the medication to Americans considered obese. US correspondent Sally Patterson reports.
More than 40% of Americans are considered obese. That's according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which warns obesity puts people at risk of heart disease, diabetes and some cancers. New proposals would expand access to insurance-covered weight loss drugs and make medicine like Ozempic affordable for many people for the first time. But when Donald Trump takes over as president early next year, plans could be disrupted. His nominee to lead the health department, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., has railed against Ozempic's popularity, pushing for a healthy lifestyle instead.
Kyiv has requested a meeting of the NATO-Ukraine Council following Russia's use of a new hypersonic ballistic missile. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that more air defence systems are needed from its allies. William Denslow reports from Brussels.
According to a NATO official, Tuesday's meeting will be at the ambassadorial level. Moscow has vowed to continue testing its new missile technology that it says is in retaliation for Kyiv's use of US and UK missiles that have hit targets in Russian territory. NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte says the military alliance needs to strengthen its own deterrence and defence and change the trajectory of the conflict.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
D.L. Cummins, Liberty Dad, from the Liberty Dad Pod, said libertarians who voted for Trump, you own this. No excuses, no ifs, ands, or buts. You were told he wouldn't deliver what he promised and was likely to deliver what we hate, not even a libertarian in the cabinet, as consolation. So the idea was, libertarians, you own this. My response was, aren't we kind of putting the cart before the horse right now, considering he's not actually in office and no one's been confirmed and nothing has happened yet and there haven't been any laws passed and no executive orders and no actions taken whatsoever by anyone, and we're talking about who's to blame?
Mm-hmm.
For what? That's the point that we're in right now, where I'm like, we're talking about nothing. We're getting mad about things that don't exist.
Yet.
It
could.
They could. Mm-hmm. And we're like drawing lines with people and arguing about something that we think is going to exist and doesn't exist yet. But the red flag laws thing, we already knew that about Trump. That's something he actually did do when he was in office last time. That's not a surprise.
Something he said.
He said. That's what he said. Don't have to say that's what she said on this one. So, as far as libertarians owning this, I don't know. I don't think you can own something that hasn't happened yet. I also think libertarians were a factor in this election in the first place. And that's what I wanted to, I got a few comments about the space from last night. My first comment is really mean. It sounded, I dipped in and out of it last night. And I got to tell you, man, I just don't think I'm really not built for this whole libertarian inside baseball party stuff. I'm just not the right guy for the job. Because when I dipped in and out of it last night, I felt like I was jumping into a bunch of people that were playing World of Warcraft, talking about their scores and their strategy for the next level and stuff like that.
Different Magic cards.
Different Magic, the Gathering convention or something like that, because it was so insignificant. I'm like, guys, you got like a little over 1 million votes last time around, way less this time. Jill Stein got more votes. RFK got more votes than Chase did. I'm not blaming Chase for that because the Libertarian Party clearly had a strategy. But you know what Trump and the Republicans found out this time? Is that they don't really have to have libertarian support. All they got to do is talk about more socialist ideas. That's really, they got to be the party of the working man, whatever that means. They got to talk about tariffs and talk about capping credit card rates and things like that. And they can get enough people that I'm telling you, I'm the wrong guy for this job, because when I heard people talking about it, I literally felt like I was listening to gamers talking about some insignificant thing that only matters to them and no one else cares about at all. Almost no one else cares about this.
I didn't dip my toes in that conversation last night, so I don't know what happened. I don't have a comment on it.
I'm not saying that's the correct way for me to feel about it, but that is what I felt, and I'll work on it. I'll try to feel differently. I'm going to try to get more involved so I feel differently when I hear these things, but that's just what it sounded like to me.
Are you saying that you can control your feelings? Feelings aren't just something that happened to you?
I can control what leads to my feelings, the way that I perceive things, and the assumptions that I make about things by having more knowledge about and looking at things from different people's perspectives. So that's a good point. I mean, that Jake said less than 10% of the population supported the American Revolution. I think it was 3%, right? Wasn't it? It was something
like
very small.
Yeah,
something very small happened, and like all the Libertarian Party talk, the most significant parts of what happened this year for libertarians could be the fact that Dave Smith has done a really good job making himself really popular and being all over all sorts of different shows and being friends with Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson. And like him being friends with those people is probably way more significant than anything the party did this year. Really. Mm-hmm. It probably really is.
He was the guy who was going to run, but decided to
I know.
drop out.
But it's like those little connections, that little network right there of people that made, in my opinion, a way bigger difference than anything that anyone else did. We'll see.
I think if Dave Smith would have ran, he could have gotten something like 5 million votes, which could have been significant in the election. Mm-hmm. But he didn't. And he had reasons. He had reasons not to do it. I'm not saying that. I'm not calling him out for not running.
Yeah.
But if you put a candidate like that up, then you have a bigger shot of actually affecting the election.
Kamala probably would have won if Smith would have won.
Yeah.
And so maybe it was more significant than what I'm giving it credit for. I guess I wanted to play a couple portions. We can play Dave Smith's opening comments and then Chase, so Chase Oliver was in this, which made it a little bit more awkward than it would have been if it would have just been like an echo chamber of Mises-ness, Chase coming in there. Honestly, I thought Chase was respectful to everyone, did a good job making his points. He didn't stick around for the whole time, but he spoke a couple times. And let's just play a little bit of it. See what we think about what Dave said here.
I will say this. I'll try to be brief, and then we can start up. I will just say that I do understand where the strategy that Angela kind of embarked on here in the Libertarian Party, and a lot of us libertarians, I know for myself and probably for a lot of other people who were supporting Donald Trump, was very much a different strategy for all of us. Most of us have not voted for major party candidates recently, and and obviously the strategy with the LP is something different than it's ever done before. I would just kind of implore a lot of libertarians to think about the fact that the world has changed. Truly drastically, the world has changed over the last few years. There's a lot of things you could point to of what really changed the world. I particularly think COVID. That's the thing I would really point to, but we could debate that. But the world has changed, and in a situation like that, I think you should at least be open to new strategies rather than kind of having this what seems to me is almost a quasi-religious allergy to even suggesting that maybe just sitting in our corner and preaching our message is not the best use of this party, especially if we're doing that in a way that isn't really moving the needle, and we have other options in front of us that potentially could really move the needle. So I'll leave it at that, and then if you want to say anything, Jacob, and then we can go to Angela and Chase.
All right, so that's Dave's opening statement there. I was going to go to Chase. Give me a second. Okay, it's not playing. So that's
the question of your space. I don't think I can answer that. That's a you.
Hey, here, Jacob. You choose. Who do we go to first, Angela or Chase?
I would say, well, let's I don't know. Let's give Chase the first word here. You made a post inviting him, and I think it's big on him to
sure.
Speak. So, Chase.
Yeah, and I should say the same. I appreciate you being here, Chase.
Hey, thanks for having me. So, first, the question of your space. I don't think I can answer that. That's a you question. Did you sell out your principles? That's a thing you have to answer, and I'm not here to answer that question or to push one way or the other. I am here to say that I think the strategy that Angela has presented and what we've gotten out of a Trump victory is not playing out the way we had anticipated. Many people thought we're going to get somebody in the Department of Education to tear it apart, somebody like Corey DeAngelis, or we're going to get Thomas Massey at Agriculture,
Republican,
or we're going to get somebody at Treasury. And what we've really gotten is Marco Rubio at Secretary of State. We have for all the grief I got over COVID stuff for running, we now have a Surgeon General who said the COVID vaccine is a gift from God. We have folks being put in place who are going to be in charge of Medicare and Medicaid that have went on their television show getting the COVID vaccine and touting boosters. And we have our president-elect of the United States who just put out a truth on Truth Social saying that he's looking forward to the 5th anniversary of COVID to celebrate how great of a job he did in Operation Warp Speed and how great his government did in the face of the China virus, right? And so I feel like a lot of the promises that were made to Angela, I assume, and others, are not being kept. This is, something that should be indicative of the two-party system. It's not new when a duopoly candidate makes a promise and then completely walks back on that. And in fact, hey, I imagine many people came to the Libertarian Party because the duopoly candidate did just that. I imagine there are people who, in 1988, when they heard "Read My Lips, no new taxes," they voted for George.
Just for a second here, I want to say, I think Chase did a good job. I don't know if we crossed all the times that he basically said he didn't fault anyone for deciding that they were going to make this decision and go along with his strategy and decide to do that he understood why people would do that. So I think he did a good job staying respectful. He did also make some points about how, people faulted him for wearing a mask and talking about social distancing and stuff like that. And then you got someone who's bragging about Operation Warp Speed, putting up a Surgeon General who said the vaccines were a gift from God. Dr. Oz getting a COVID vaccine on his TV show, stuff like that. And then Dave made a good point that the calculus here is different, which is the point I've made. You're held to a different standard when you're saying you want the Libertarian Party nomination in their votes, because that's a principled vote. And a vote for Republican is not a principled vote. It's a strategic vote, which is what I've been saying for a bit. We don't have time to play the 4 clips from this that I really wanted to play. I just want to tell you guys that I had no expectation that there was going to be a libertarian in the cabinet, which I said since the day that he made that promise. There were rumors going around that he had decided to pick Thomas Massie for USDA and stuff like that a month ago, or weeks ago.
We did say, at least I said, I know that I had hope.
Yeah.
That's
where you went wrong.
Well, I said at the very least, I know with Kamala I'm getting nothing. With Trump, there's at least some hope. And I think some of the picks are decent. I think some of them could go well. Some of them seem to be absolutely terrible. But as libertarians who want the government to have less power, hopefully the ones, let's say, that are terrible, or even the ones that are good, they don't have much power to do anything. That would be the hope, the actual hope. The fact that we want federal government to be smaller, not bigger. But, I've said from the very beginning, I think in 2016, to not be surprised by Trump. Like, technically, I've said this since he started running in 2006, 15, 16, whatever it is. He is a liberal Democrat from New York. That's who he is.
Yeah.
So he's always been. That's why he was friends with everybody from The View and all of these people. Like, that is who he is. There's no surprise there. By supporting Trump and voting for Trump, it was more, and I've been clear about this, it was more a vote against what I find to be more dangerous, which is the gaslighting, the manipulation, the wars, the things on that, which, by the way, when you look at Trump's actual time in office, those things got better. There was actually a push against the wokeism. There was a push against cancel culture. There was a push against things like that. Where
you could say some of the craziness we got was a reaction to Trump being in office also.
Potentially.
I think that's a good... Sorry, I cut you off when we were talking. I just...
No.
I don't remember what you were saying.
Potentially. But, again, well, should we answer the question for Dave Smith here? Did I sell out my principles by supporting Trump? Can we ask ourselves the same question? Did I sell out my principles by supporting Trump? I don't think so.
Well, clearly, if you thought you were, you probably wouldn't have done it.
Right.
So it would still be no.
This wasn't a principled vote.
Yeah.
This was a...
Plus, my principles have nothing to do with voting for the Libertarian Party. Never have. I don't care. I'm gonna probably a lot of friends in the party aren't gonna like any of the stuff I've said today so far about gamers and stuff like that. But I don't care if they even exist. I don't care if the Libertarian Party exists. I don't care if they ever get any votes. I care if we move towards liberty or away from liberty. That's all I care about. I don't care if the party is called freaking Nazi Socialist USA. If somehow we get more actual individual liberty, the name of it makes no... I don't care what the name of it is.
So you would vote for Nazis then? If they
Not actual Nazis,
if
no.
they promise liberty.
No, I'm saying I don't care what the name of the party is.
So,
it could be the most detestable commie Nazi name you ever came up with. I don't care.
So Ninos. Nazi in name only.
Nazis in name. Yeah, exactly. I vote for Ninos. That got me on record right now. So I and this year seemed a little different to me, where I actually did decide that lesser of two evils was important this time around. And it's because, all the things that we say, like we're about to head off a cliff, we're close to World War III, we're getting closer and closer to never being able to turn back around. Maybe a lot of people say these things and they're just being hyperbolic. I like to believe that we say these things and we mean them, that we are at a dangerous tipping point. There is a point where I think moving towards complete tyranny slower than we otherwise would buys us more time to figure something else out, And since I actually believe we're getting to the point of no return, then yeah, I made that calculus this year. But because we gotta go. I want to say, I'll say something, and then you say something. It's just how podcasts work.
Is that how it works?
That's how podcasts work, just in case you didn't know. Guys, we're about to go.
But if you say something, then how am I going to say something?
Well, you say something after I say something.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm giving you the last word.
Okay.
We're about to go into Thanksgiving and hang out with our families and, see people that we don't see all that often. I just want to tell you guys
Except
the
for
most
me.
important. We should actually do a show tomorrow about
how my brother's not coming to
Well,
Thanksgiving.
not about your brother specifically, although you could connect the dots between this episode and tomorrow's episode. But our biggest episode ever had to do with how to speak to your vaccinated family members about COVID or whatever. And so maybe we'll come up with something for, the trannies. But we're about to go into a nice little holiday, maybe see some family and stuff like that. I don't know if it's just because we're in the holiday season or what it is, but all this stuff just seems super pointless to me when nothing's happened yet. Can you guys tell me who the Secretary of Labor, the Labor Secretary was in Trump's first term?
No idea.
No? Can you name, without Googling, can you name me 10 cabinet members from Trump's first term? And the first people he nominated, not even the ones he actually ended up with at all. No, the answer is no. The two of us can't. I know that. And I just spend all my days Googling things about politics, and I can't name them.
Yeah, I don't keep up with cabinets.
Yeah, me either.
I'm not a cabinet
I got a cabinet guy.
Yeah. Cabinets, it's a very specialized area.
Yeah, it is. Cabinetry is a big...
Cabinets are tough.
There's like guys who frame, and there's guys who make cabinets.
Yeah.
And I'm more of a framer.
And there's guys who hang drywall and ladies who mud drywall.
There's people who mud. Exactly. And so, I can't even tell you who the cabinet members were Trump's first time around, but I still think Trump's 4 years was better than Biden's 4 years. And I can do that calculus and say this 4 years of Trump, we're probably going to have a way better situation than if we would have continued 4 more years of the people who have actually been running the country for the last 4 years. And I can't even tell you who was in the cabinet. I don't know what their positions on unions were at all. I know who some of the terrible people were. But listen, we haven't confirmed these people. They haven't done anything. We don't know the difference between their rhetoric on some of these ideas and what they're actually going to get in there and do. And so let's not spend our holiday break being all worked up about things that haven't happened. That's my little bit of advice for everyone. There will come a day in 2 months, a little less than 2 months, where these people are going to be in power. Some of them are going to get confirmed. Some of them are not. And then we can talk about the things that they actually do and what's good about that and what's wrong about that. But spending all this time speculating about what we think is going to happen or not happen, we could do a whole show about whether or not we think Trump is going to pardon Ross. Great. What a freaking waste of an hour. Because we don't have a time machine. We have no clue. And we're going to know. We're going to know in 2 months. That's when we're going to know.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people who are just going to talk about these things endlessly for content and then have no clue whether or not any of it's actually going to happen at all.
I thought I got to say something.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So you said something, and now I get to say something. I will push back on that a little bit by saying we do speculate about what would happen if Kamala won.
We do.
We did speculate on how much worse we think it would be if Kamala won. Like, even though if she would have won, we wouldn't know what her decisions were. She wouldn't be in yet.
Yeah.
But we would be talking about how much worse it was going to be if she would have won. So
like currently right now?
Yeah.
Oh, we'd be sounding the alarm.
Exactly.
Right
so
now.
I would say that I think it's fair to speculate some. I think it is fair. Now, whether or not you lay blame, I don't think there's room for that. But you can speculate on some of these things happening, because you have to. The only way to really predict the future is to buy. Well, there's no way to predict the future, but the only way to have an essence of like what's going to happen is by judging by the past, and by looking at, okay, when these types of people get into positions of power, what have they done with that power? And then speculate on whether or not that might happen and whether or not it's going to be good for the people and the economy and what's actually happening. So that's all I'll say on that. I don't think I get what you're saying too. The truth is we don't know. Mm-hmm. And we'll say that every time on the show. We don't actually know what's going to happen. But if you want to get to who's at fault, or was this the right idea? Did we sell out our principles by supporting Trump? Any of that thing, I will stand up for me and myself and my vote and say that my vote for Trump had nothing to do with any of that. And I think my speculation, similar to Nate's speculation, is that the continuation of the Biden administration, by them doing things like trying to create a ministry of truth and regulate misinformation,
it was a disinformation governance board. It was the DGB.
Whatever. Again, disinformation, misinformation, to continue on that path, to me, was way worse for liberty. And I know what a Trump presidency was like. And I can hang my hat on that and say...
It was bad for liberty, but not as bad.
Not great. Not great, but it's better.
It was bad, slower.
So, anyway, that's all I have to say about that.
All right, we got to go. Tell everyone what they won.
You won nothing.
Okay, there you go.
Keep working. Get up every day and work hard. That's what you won. Mm-hmm. You won. If you're listening to this, you're alive.
You won in life.
So
compared to so many other people who didn't,
the opportunity. If you got legs, run. If you ain't got no legs, roll.
There you go. Let's roll.
And that's all I have to say about that.
All right, so remember, before we get into the next block, that you are listening to Liberty at Night on the Free Talk Live Network, but we do go by another name, which is Good Morning Liberty. You can find 1,418 episodes on your favorite podcast app. You can watch all of our videos on YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey. And make sure you leave a comment, leave a rating and review on the podcast app. It really does help with all of those algorithms out there. They pay attention to what people say they like. So make sure you do that, and make sure you tell your friends and family that they need to listen to. Be right back.
Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 13th through the 16th for the 8th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which has sold out in recent years. Fork Fest happens the weekend before the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 13th through the 16th. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the ForkFest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the ForkFest forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 13th through the 16th. forkfest.party.
How many lawyers does it take to change a light bulb? None. They'd rather keep their clients in the dark. There are too many lawyer jokes to count. However, there are some lawyers with more noble intentions. At the Institute for Justice, we bring the light to our clients. We are a non-profit public interest law firm with clear values and principles. At IJ, we fight for those whose most basic rights are denied by the government. Visit our website today at ij.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live listen line, 641-793-0191.
The latest episode of Free Talk Live continues with Hour 2 up next after the news here at listen.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. The Israeli Security Cabinet has approved a ceasefire deal with the militant group Hezbollah in Lebanon after it was presented by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It represents a major breakthrough in efforts to avert a wider war in the region. Netanyahu said the ceasefire is necessary to refocus attention on the Palestinian militant group Hamas in the Gaza Strip and the threat posed by Iran. The United Nations has ordered the evacuation of some of its key staff from Haiti as clashes between armed gangs and the police intensify. In the last few days, the UN has reported a major escalation of violence in the capital that's left scores dead and thousands displaced. Jody Jacobs reports from the United Nations in New York.
The main international airport in Port-au-Prince has been closed after commercial flights were hit by gunfire while landing and taking off earlier this month. Most foreign embassies are now also closed. Some 400 UN-backed security teams are on the ground, comprising mostly of Kenyan police. But this has done little to quell the tensions. The Haitian government, backed by the United States, is now calling on the UN Security Council to authorize a full-scale peacekeeping operation, a move opposed by Russia and China.
US health insurance could soon have to offer coverage of weight loss drugs under proposals from the Biden administration. The new rules would force Medicare and Medicaid, that's state and federal insurance programs, to provide the medication to Americans considered obese. US correspondent Sally Patterson reports.
More than 40% of Americans are considered obese. That's according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which warns obesity puts people at risk of heart disease, diabetes and some cancers. New proposals would expand access to insurance-covered weight loss drugs and make medicine like Ozempic affordable for many people for the first time. But when Donald Trump takes over as president early next year, plans could be disrupted. His nominee to lead the health department, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., has railed against Ozempic's popularity, pushing for a healthy lifestyle instead.
Kyiv has requested a meeting of the NATO-Ukraine Council following Russia's use of a new hypersonic ballistic missile. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that more air defence systems are needed from its allies. William Denslow reports from Brussels.
According to a NATO official, Tuesday's meeting will be at the ambassadorial level. Moscow has vowed to continue testing its new missile technology that it says is in retaliation for Kyiv's use of US and UK missiles that have hit targets in Russian territory. NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte says the military alliance needs to strengthen its own deterrence and defence and change the trajectory of the conflict. William Denslow, Brussels.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking in more detail today at the threat from President Vladimir Putin of Russia to ramp up production of new hypersonic missiles that he says he now needs after President Biden gave the Ukrainians approval to use US-supplied weapons without restraint, allowing Attacker missiles to be used against targets on Russian soil. In Western Europe, governments are worried about possible reprisals from Moscow, where the Kremlin has once again revised its nuclear posture. But Russia analyst Keir Giles, a senior consulting fellow at Chatham House in London, is urging the West to damp down the saber-rattling.
Ordinarily, I'm the one that's ringing the alarm bells. I'm the one that's talking about the threat from Russia, how unprepared we are to defend ourselves, and how we need to get ready for something terrifying coming down the track. But in this particular case, actually, I think it's overdoing it. I think this is alarmist, and unfortunately, the language that we're hearing is exactly what Russia wants us to hear. Because the saber rattling, as you call it, is designed to have this production of this fear, uncertainty and doubt. We should be calm and sober when we're looking at the problems are, but things have moved on since these threats of a cyber Pearl Harbor a decade ago.
That threat of hybrid warfare by the Russians is definitely a concern. The US warned allies about it last week after 2 undersea cables were severed in the Baltic, for which Russia denies all responsibility. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our main news again. The Israeli Security Cabinet has approved a ceasefire deal with the militant group Hezbollah in Lebanon. The UN has ordered the evacuation of some of its key staff from Haiti as clashes between armed gangs and the police intensify. And US health insurance could soon have to offer coverage of weight loss drugs under proposals from the Biden administration. And that's the latest feature story news. Kate Fisher reporting.
Markets went into a frenzy today after the price of money suddenly skyrocketed to $90 a dollar. Onion reporters spoke to economics professor Mark Cosgrave about the soaring cost of U.S. currency and the impact of increasingly unpredictable dollar-to-dollar rates.
Right now, money prices are steeply rising with no signs of slowing down. This morning alone, the price of dollars nearly tripled, with 1 cent worth approximately $6. That's exponentially higher than even a week ago when money was trading at roughly $53 on the dollar. To put it bluntly, we're now in the midst of a national economic crisis.
According to Cosgrave, the abrupt spike in dollar prices initially caused many Americans to hold on to their money, hoping that the $90 cost of dollars would soon dip back down. But as prices continued to climb, investors panicked and began purchasing as much money as possible.
But with the cost of quarters hitting $4.97 and the $5 bill jumping to a 12-year high of $372, the days when you could get $30 or $40 for just a couple of bucks are unfortunately long gone.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
What's up, all of our liberty-loving friends? This is another fantastic episode of Liberty at Night with Nate and Charlie on the Free Talk Live Network. I'm going to bring you guys an interview that new guy Josh did with James Irwin, who is a federal affairs manager for telecommunications and Americans for Tax Reform, talking about Biden's broadband equity program.
My name is Josh Martins, and joining me today is James Irwin. So James is a federal affairs manager for telecommunications at Americans for Tax Reform, executive director of Digital Liberty, and is a contributor at Young Voices. James has a pretty unique story to go over with us today. He is one of the people involved with implementing the Biden administration's Broadband Equity Access and Development, or BEAD program, the one that we talked on the show that spent millions and millions of dollars and connected exactly 0 homes to the internet. I think that was even in Dumb Bleep of the Week once. So he is here because he recently wrote a piece in the National Review talking about his experience with the BEAD program. And he's joining us today to discuss these experiences and just what all happened with his time on Capitol Hill. So, James, welcome to the show.
Hey, Josh, great to be here, and thank you for having me.
Yeah. So you quite literally had a front row seat to kind of the chaos that happens on Capitol Hill. And that gives us a unique perspective from somebody with a liberty kind of mind. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and about how you found yourself on Capitol Hill and working with these programs?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm from Maine originally, and if you're liberty-minded or remotely right of center in Maine, you really don't have too many options if you want to get involved. Obviously, you can always engage at the local level, and certainly a lot of people just move to New Hampshire because it's a lot easier there. But really, the big name in town is Susan Collins, and she's the last Republican senator from New England. She's the last member of Congress, actually, at either house that's a Republican and at all friendly to limited government messages, even though I'm sure some people would think that she's insufficient in that regard because she is a centrist. She's a pragmatist. That has always been her brand, and that's how she sticks around. And the people of Maine have learned to trust her and trust her judgment on governance issues because of her honesty with them and her openness to being in the middle and bipartisan deal maker and part of the process and in the mix down in DC. But so like many liberty-minded young folks in Maine, that's where you get your start. You intern for her in her office somewhere, and if you're good enough, you eventually get to work full time in the DC office. And that was my story. I started out interning in college. A lot of it's just doing constituent service, helping folks find their social security checks, helping people work with the IRS when they go after you for your money. Really nuts and bolts of public service. And then over time, you get to work more and more on policy if you stick around long enough. And so eventually I got to work on broadband policy, got to work on telecommunications. It's really fascinating to me. And I know vanishingly few other people. Although we have a pretty nice little cabal of telecom folks in DC that we get together and talk about how to limit government involvement in the communications industry.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm very jealous. Maine is definitely on my list of places to see because it looks beautiful. I don't think I'd want to live there. I don't think I would fit in with the politics, but I do live in Wisconsin, so we get to swing back and forth up here. So
probably not all that different, frankly. It's a lot of it's got that sort of farm labor heritage, and yeah, a lot of people from northern New England ended up settling Wisconsin originally. And when I was in Milwaukee for the RNC over the summer, I noticed that there were all these street names. One of them was Juneau, which is like a French Canadian name, and Maine is just absolutely full of French Canadians and their descendants. That at least was familiar to me. There's something there's some connections between Wisconsin and Maine, so I don't think you'd find it too unfamiliar.
Wow, you learn something new every day. I didn't know that. So obviously you found yourself on Capitol Hill and found yourself working on this on the BEAD program. Tell us about your experiences with this program, because I'm assuming Susan Collins was a signer of the program, and that's how you found yourself in the mix there. Tell us, so you had that front row seat, but just tell us a little bit about your experiences there and your experiences with some of the other people working on the policy.
Sure. So one of the things people have to understand about how big legislation comes together, we talk about, a lot of people like to complain about, these 1,000-page bills that nobody reads and they're shoved at you at the last minute. And, well, someone does read them, and it's the staff. And this isn't to diminish the members at all, because the members don't, frankly, have time to read things. What they have time for are memos written by their staffers who are purportedly experts in policy. Or I guess more accurately, are people who are really good at learning what they need to know about a subject really quickly. That's the skill you learn as a Capitol Hill staffer. And you learn what information you need to get to your boss and how to explain to them who thinks what about this. So where is this interest group on the issue? Where's that interest group on the issue? Where are the unions? Where are the activist groups? Where are the third parties? All the different, and also, of course, how is it polling? How will this be demagogued against? What are the arguments you can make for it? How will you defend yourself if you vote for it? How will you be attacked if you vote for it? And then vice versa. How would you defend a vote against this nominee or against this bill? And how do you defend or attack a vote by the other side that went against you? So, but the way these packages come together is oftentimes it's pre-existing legislation that members have already introduced that are stitched together. So in this case, talking about the infrastructure bill. So this was President Biden kind of taking credit for it. It's become known as the Biden infrastructure bill. But, this was something that was 10 years in the making. Obama wanted infrastructure week, over a decade ago. So this was sort of this decade-long effort of all these different senators who had kind of flirted with doing something and coming to a deal before and then backed off, and it sort of ebbed and flowed over the years, which is quite typical of how legislation comes together. But ultimately what happens is a bunch of different members who are interested in the subject have introduced their own bills, and you end up getting their staffers into a room first, and they come up with a rough draft. They sort of hammer out the parameters of what the bill will look like. And staff is not able to actually make any real decisions. Obviously, that is what your elected member of Congress is supposed to do. But what we do, and what the staffers are meant to do, is come up with a series of decisions that the members have to make to escalate to them. So there's some minor stuff that everybody's going to be on the same page about. We don't get them arguing over drafting, right? We don't get them arguing over grammar. Like that's not their job. That's our job. And so our negotiations are about what are the policies we are considering, what are within the realm of the possible. And then memos are sent up to the bosses, and meetings are held at a higher level with them when they all get in a room. And sometimes we get to listen on Zoom or something like that, where they make much, faster decisions, based on the information that has been provided to them. But the point is basically the staff write these bills, the staff, come up with the universe of possibilities for the decisions for the members to make. The members make the final decisions about what provisions will be included and not included. And then sometimes, I will say, my boss, Susan Collins, was very detail oriented, herself. So she was one of the people who was really good at getting into the room and actually digging into the text. Part of that is because she was a staffer herself one day. So when you get these former staffers who are members, Katie Britt from Alabama is a recent one as well. They tend to be extremely detail oriented and very, very good in these negotiations because they know how to get into the nitty gritty. And I will say the broadband title of this bill ultimately came from this sort of knockdown, drag out 10-hour session where I think it was Senator Collins and Senator Shaheen in a room together, sort of hammering out the final details, the final compromise. And I would, in those are some situations where staff don't even get to be in the room. Usually they'll have one or two chief of staff or LD or somebody at that level, attending upon them and just giving them information that they need quickly. But, all this to say that there's sort of a couple of rounds and a couple of levels at which these negotiations take place. And, another thing that I think, liberty-minded listeners should know is that, there are a lot of Republican staffers on Capitol Hill, and their ultimate loyalty is to their boss and their boss's priorities. So the member office has to set the member they're serving sets the agenda and sets the ideology of the office. There aren't a lot of people who are real political ideologues working on the Hill. That's something that people need to understand. A lot of young people like myself who do have a strong ideological leaning start there, but not too many end up lasting a really, really long time because you do have to be flexible. You have to check your ideology at the door and serve your boss. And certainly that was what I was doing when I was there, but you have a duty to the people you're representing. You have a duty to the boss you're serving, to make sure that you are fairly representing what they think, not what you think. Now, different staffers take that with different levels of seriousness. I would say certainly on the Democratic side, there are a lot of ideologues on staff. And I'm not sure all of them were being totally honest with their bosses about what they were negotiating for and what they were pushing to include in these bills. So it was an interesting look into the types of people who become congressional staffers and the process of how the sausage gets made. One other thing I'd mention is that I think it would be nice if more liberty-minded individuals did get interested in working in government. I know that libertarians are averse to government for very good reason. I don't like it either. But if you want to keep it out of your life, it is important for you to engage in some way. And one of the best ways you can is to get into the belly of the beast, learn how it works. Even if you don't stick around for very long, you could be much more effective as an advocate on the outside if you know the kinds of people who make these decisions, where these key nodes are, and at what point in the process you can intervene. Because these things sort of take years to come together and then they happen all at once.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that one thing that liberty-minded people can struggle with is we want to get rid of a lot of the intertwined bureaucracy in the government, but you have to get involved and you have to be, you have to understand some of it in order to untangle that knot and that mess. And so that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to have you on and really talk about this, because I found your piece interesting and just the process behind the scenes interesting, and I think that it's something that liberty-minded people need to know about. So I want to get into kind of the nuts and bolts of your piece and what and your experiences here. One of the things that you talked about was that obviously as the different staffers come in with the different the different bosses or representatives, they have conflicting priorities. So you have priorities from Republicans, you have priorities from the Democrats. Talk a little bit about some of the conflicting priorities that you saw and how that kind of worked itself out.
Sure. I do want to back up and say one last thing about personnel, though. There is a personnel challenge that people interested in limited government have, not just in libertarian-minded folks not getting involved and ceding, say, the Republican Party's positions to people who have a more sort of pro-business, and I mean that in sort of the bad way, the corporate welfare, subsidy, protectionist leaning types, to sort of take the field. But the other issue is that most of the Republican staffers that I worked with, their end goal is, and this is not a criticism of them, this is what they want to do with their life. Their end goal is to work for industry as a lobbyist. Their end goal is not to shrink the size and scope of the government. The Democrat staffers' end goal in life, I mean, sure, they'll cash out and do the same thing. They'll behave the same way. But what they really want is a career in government. What they really want is a career in making rules for other people to follow. That imbalance is actually quite difficult for people interested in limited government to work around when it comes to major legislation. So when you talk about conflicting priorities, an infrastructure bill comes down. What do Republicans want out of it? Well, first of all, most are going to vote against it. So the ones who are coming to the table are the ones who are interested in bringing home some bacon for the district, right? Or for the state. So they want some subsidies for some projects that have been taking forever to materialize in their states. Sometimes they take a limited government approach to that, where they just want like permitting reform, which is great, something that allows people to build faster, it allows more development, it allows the free market to flourish. Sometimes they're looking to, say, license more spectrum for cell phone companies to provide more service in areas, things like that. That's what they're looking for. They're looking to free up real estate. They're looking for permits. They're looking to allow business development to happen to facilitate more commerce. On the Democratic side, what are they looking for? They're looking for a slush fund to pay off to their constituents so they can keep winning elections and keep making more rules. Or they're looking to attach strings to money that is going out to people so that they can govern something later. So what does that mean in the case of broadband specifically? Well, what the Democrats wanted were three main priorities. They wanted a preference for union labor to pay off their buddies who run their political machines for them. B, a preference for price control so that they can micromanage what the internet costs. And they dress this up, and I'm sure some of them sincerely believe this is on behalf of helping the poor. But ultimately, it is government control, because that's what everything leads back to for them, is government control. And C, their other big priority was to bankroll government-owned broadband networks. And these are networks that are largely set up by counties and towns that provide broadband as a public utility service, much like we would energy or water to a local community. And they want the internet. It's not popular to say you want to nationalize the internet. They have that in Australia. It doesn't work very well. People aren't really running on that when it comes to election time. But what they are running on is, why don't we stand up a nice, friendly neighborhood government-owned network instead of that big, mean ISP that you sometimes have trouble with and don't answer you all the time when you have a service outage. Well, let me tell you what happens long term. Long term, economically, a taxpayer-subsidized government-owned network can always undersell a private sector ISP. They can always charge less because they're getting a subsidy from you, the taxpayer. I mean, you're paying for it regardless, but the sticker price to the consumer is less. So what does that mean? Well, people switch to the government-owned network. It drives the private sector ISP out of the market. This is exactly what happened, almost 100 years ago now with the Tennessee Valley Authority during the New Deal. Right? They set up this government electricity company. It drove the private electricity companies in Tennessee that were in the business of developing and connecting people. The reason they hadn't was because there was depression on people couldn't afford the internet, couldn't afford electricity when it was relatively new and still being built out, right? There wasn't capital for the infrastructure. So the government said, well, we have to do it. And so they go in, they drive the private electric companies out of business. And now there's effectively government controlled electricity, and through this entity, the Tennessee Valley Authority, that's still around today. Most people don't even know that Wendell Willkie, who challenged FDR in the election of 1940, was actually president of an electric company that had gone bankrupt because of the TVA, because it had a government competitor. But anyway, what they do then is they scoop up all the orphaned customers from the bankrupt ISP. They put them on the government-run network. And because they're not charging market rates, over time, they go bankrupt themselves because they can't sustain a free market model on federal subsidies. And so then they start asking for bailouts from the state. And when the state gets tired of giving them taxpayer money, they start asking for bailouts from the federal government. And over time, what you're going to see is nationalized internet through a constellation of government-owned networks that are ostensibly locally owned, but are all dependent on state and federal money. And over time, there's going to be calls of, well, this is what the left loves to do, is they point at something that's deeply inefficient because they've made it deeply inefficient and said, well, that doesn't work. We need to nationalize it. And so that's how they build the case for these things. Just to give you another example of how this works is you look at Chicago today with Brandon Johnson, who's the mayor, who's I think an avowed communist, at least an avowed socialist, but he has allowed crime to run so rampant in his city by refusing to arrest anyone for retail theft. It has become impossible for any business to reasonably operate in certain areas. So their stores are closing down in a lot of the poorer areas of Chicago. Grocery stores are closing down. People don't have access to food because crime is so rampant and so bad. And he's pointing at that now and saying, well, now we need city-owned, government-run grocery stores. We need food co-ops that my food commissar will distribute to the peasants, to the proletariat, and their allotted amount, because the evil capitalists of the private sector wouldn't provide it to them. So this is their MO. This is the way they bring socialism to America, is by making by using the state to drive the private sector out, making it intentionally inefficient, and then saying, "Well, see, the private sector can't do it, so now we have to."
Interesting. And so in the negotiations, obviously, so the left leaning people were trying to push for, you said, unions. They were trying to push for government owned things, which makes sense because that's going to grow government. It's also going to create opportunities, like you said. They're looking for government jobs someday, so that's going to create opportunities there and grow that size of government. What were the Republicans pushing for? What was their priorities?
Well, our big priority was just to hold the line. Like, we knew this bill was going to pass. And this is another thing we have to keep in mind, is that when senators go into these negotiations and it makes the news, it's like, well, they kind of own it now, right? Like, something's going to pass. They're going to vote for it. Let's make sure it's palatable for them to vote for. So let's hold back some of the worst examples of this. But then their other priority was to serve their constituents, because Republicans disproportionately are representing the rural areas of America. And those are the ones without internet. So the purpose was supposed to be to write a rural broadband expansion bill. And I think that the final product that came out of the legislative negotiations more or less did that. You always have to eat some things from the other side. Both sides had to compromise on their vision. So, for example, the Democrats wanted to overturn every single state law that govern government-owned networks, because a lot of states have passed laws regulating them and saying, okay, you can't set one up unless it can turn a profit within 4 years. That's one out of Florida. Some states have outlawed them entirely and said, this is not a good use of taxpayer money. No city or town can set up a government-owned network. So they would have overturned all of those state laws and would have forced states to allow government networks to spring up and bankroll them. We were able to keep that out. Our priority, of course, was we shouldn't spend this money to any government-owned network. They shouldn't be eligible to apply for grants under this program at all. The compromise in between was they're eligible to apply, but states are free to outlaw them or keep them out of the program. So ultimately, the goal of the Republicans was to make sure the money was spent as efficiently as possible to actually build out broadband in rural, unserved areas and bring the internet to where it didn't already exist. And we did this kind of around the time Starlink was starting to really come into its own as a consumer technology that people could use. And so you might think, well, then your effort's a little bit obsolete. And you wouldn't be totally wrong in thinking that. What I would say is that the benefit of actually building out some infrastructure, even if it is a bit of a waste of money, and then having Starlink come in as a competitor, is you actually preserve competition. So these places that had no internet access, instead of just putting them under the monopoly of Starlink, well, now you actually do have 5G service, you do have fiber service and Starlink. And now they're actually competing with each other, giving the consumer some choice, putting some downward pressure on price in perpetuity into the future. And then the other good thing about it is it's a one-time spend. It's not Medicaid expansion. It's going to go on forever and ever and ever as long as there are human beings living in the state.
Well, I would say it's not a one-time spend, because the government always finds a way to spend the money somewhere. I think
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. The Israeli Security Cabinet has approved a ceasefire deal with the militant group Hezbollah in Lebanon after it was presented by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It represents a major breakthrough in efforts to avert a wider war in the region. Netanyahu said the ceasefire is necessary to refocus attention on the Palestinian militant group Hamas in the Gaza Strip and the threat posed by Iran. The United Nations has ordered the evacuation of some of its key staff from Haiti as clashes between armed gangs and the police intensify. In the last few days, the UN has reported a major escalation of violence in the capital that's left scores dead and thousands displaced. Jody Jacobs reports from the United Nations in New York.
The main international airport in Port-au-Prince has been closed after commercial flights were hit by gunfire while landing and taking off earlier this month. Most foreign embassies are now also closed. Some 400 UN-backed security teams are on the ground, comprising mostly of Kenyan police. But this has done little to quell the tensions. The Haitian government, backed by the United States, is now calling on the UN Security Council to authorize a full-scale peacekeeping operation, a move opposed by Russia and China.
US health insurance could soon have to offer coverage of weight loss drugs under proposals from the Biden administration. The new rules would force Medicare and Medicaid, that's state and federal insurance programs, to provide the medication to Americans considered obese. US correspondent Sally Patterson reports.
More than 40% of Americans are considered obese. That's according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which warns obesity puts people at risk of heart disease, diabetes and some cancers. New proposals would expand access to insurance-covered weight loss drugs and make medicine like Ozempic affordable for many people for the first time. But when Donald Trump takes over as president early next year, plans could be disrupted. His nominee to lead the health department, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., has railed against Ozempic's popularity, pushing for a healthy lifestyle instead.
Kyiv has requested a meeting of the NATO-Ukraine Council following Russia's use of a new hypersonic ballistic missile. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that more air defence systems are needed from its allies. William Denslow reports from Brussels.
According to a NATO official, Tuesday's meeting will be at the ambassadorial level. Moscow has vowed to continue testing its new missile technology that it says is in retaliation for Kyiv's use of US and UK missiles that have hit targets in Russian territory. NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte says the military alliance needs to strengthen its own deterrence and defence and change the trajectory of the conflict.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
In 10 years, we would be talking about why are we using this kind of bill that's been 10 years ago to spend on, some nursing home somewhere in Egypt. I don't know. So it happens. It's a joke. But I was going to ask about Starlink. I'm an ultra runner, and one of the races that I've looked at running is actually called the Hennepin 100. And what's interesting about it is down in Illinois, this race is built on a canal trail that was a government built a structure that would actually guide ships through Illinois, and it was supposed to dramatically increase productivity and moving goods and all this stuff. And they built this right about the time that they were building railroad tracks everywhere. So the government spent a ton of money to build this canal. I think I think you even run on the oxen or whatever like trail that was supposed to guide these ships. So just this complete obsolete technology that they spent a ton of money on. And by the time they got it done, no one ever used it because they were running everything by train. And that was where my mind went when I read this and thought, why are we running fiber in Alaska when we have Starlink that we can just sell them a connection and there you go. And I would say that the pushback on the competition is, yes, Starlink needs competition, but as long as there's other competition, Starlink can offer services in those other areas, as long as they're still having to compete with fiber in Chicago and every kind of where else. But I do see your point when you said that Starlink definitely does need competition. Essentially what you were saying is that the Republicans wanted to push it to the states, correct? And have them do that. And the Democrats wanted to push it towards the government kind of owned monopolies and push it to unions, which makes sense given the two different parties. How was the Republicans' priorities? Like you had said that they want to move towards lobbyists. How is their priorities going to get that money to lobbyists or to the companies for them to their future kind of thing? Because you brought that up. How does that play into kind of that Republican bent? If you know where I'm kind of going with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you do a good job in making sure that the program is easy for business to use, easy for states to use, and easy to actually connect customers with service through the private sector, I think you've set yourself up well for a future career with those same companies. So, no. Again, I don't say this as a criticism. I think that this is actually a good career stepping stone that plenty of young people should consider. But it is just to say that most of them in the room are not limited government ideologues fighting for the best possible use of taxpayer money. They're fighting for how do we keep our voters happy and how do I keep my future options open.
Right.
And it's really human right, but it's very different from the religion of government that comes from the other side. That is, right. So there's a sort of an asymmetrical desire, for uses of government in a lot of these Capitol Hill negotiations that I think listeners should be cognizant of. And it actually helps explain a lot of the products that come out of these legislative negotiations once you know that and sort of accept that that's who is doing sort of the nitty gritty writing of the bills, if not the high level negotiations the members do.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of where I was thinking. So the way you were explaining it, you have the Democrats pushing the money towards the unions and if that's going to provide them the career, you have the Republicans pushing it so that they have a path towards bigger business and stuff like that. Libertarians and liberty-minded people don't like either of those scenarios because we don't want big business to be involved with these bills. We want the big business just to compete and provide us with the best service. We would rather that them not be involved with the government at all. And in turn, then we think that that's not going to give the power to the liberals to try and regulate all these things out. And so the lobbyists and the liberals then come together to try and, the businesses and the liberals come together to try and create these regulations that then push their competition out. And it just causes a big mess. And so that's where I think that us liberty-minded people see this scenario and we see that the Republicans and the Democrats, while they look like they're trying to compete on opposite sides, sometimes if you take it to the logical conclusion, it ends up being one and the same. And that's a dangerous thing, I think for us in a way. But I can see the difference in the staffers and what they're trying to do and the different priorities. And it is interesting to me to see how they both are coming at it from a different direction. So I don't mean that in a way to knock them down in any way. It's just the system that itself that kind of is going to grow no matter which direction it's leading. And that's sad, but interesting to me. I should say not shocking, but interesting all in the same.
You're absolutely right. And I think that one of the ways that we can not solve the problem, but improve it is more people, and certainly more younger people who are, young enough and have the energy and the wherewithal to be on Capitol Hill, because it's a tough business and you don't get paid very much. And it's not a good place for a mid-career professional unless you already have experience. So you do have to start, at the bottom sort of get your, earn your licks, take your licks rather. And, what's the expression? It's you learn the ropes, you earn your lick, you take your licks, and you earn your, keep?
Stripes? I don't know.
Earn your stripes. That's what I was looking for. Mixing my metaphors all over the place here, but either way, it's good for more people who are libertarian bent and, even conservative leading libertarians to try and get these jobs and not just work for Rand Paul and Thomas Massie and Mike Lee and some of those good members who oppose all these sorts of these wastes of money and oppose government mandates on broadband build out and everything like that. It also helps to get into the offices of all of the sort of run-of-the-mill Republicans who probably agree with that agenda, but have a different idea. There's a certain expectation the public has that we need to do more in the intellectual sphere to reverse that. The government ought to do this, or, that sounds nice. They're going to spend money on this bridge they're going to repave this road that's bumpy that I don't like. A lot of people do fall for that, even though I should point out that I think it's a little bit overblown, and I think it's people in DC believe that people care more about getting bribed with infrastructure spending and cash infusions in their town more than they actually do. I think people actually are more pragmatic and smarter than people in DC tend to give them credit for. I think recent election results definitely prove that, as most people were basically concerned about inflation and said, I don't think the Democrats did a good job of running things, but vote Republican. And that's basically the whole story of the election, despite all of the drama that we sort of retroactively write into it. But all this to say that I think more young people of that mindset should get involved and should seek jobs in Capitol Hill, even if not to convince your boss not to vote for things like this, but to be involved in the room and help shape them in a more effective direction. Like, how can we if we're going to spend this money, how do we do it in a way that actually provides real flexibility? How do we do it in a way that wastes the least? And how do we do it in a way, especially, that doesn't give tools to the other side to expand government? And that was one of the things I was thinking about. So the main thing that we advocated for was make this a block grant and let the states determine their own policies. And that largely was the case, but it was states need to be able to attend to their own local needs. They're closer to the problem. They can listen to their constituents better. They're more democratic because, there's no electoral college for governor. Like, state senates are directly proportionate. Right? Let the people have oversight at the closest level of government to how their money's being spent, and just let the states actually deal with this and tackle their challenges as they know them and as they've been experiencing them for a while, and that we in DC, can't possibly fathom. I'll tell you, it was in a couple of rounds of negotiations on this, and nothing can put you off of the idea of having a national broadband policy more than being in the room with somebody from Louisiana and Alaska and West Virginia, all trying to develop a plan about how they're going to expand broadband access in a one-size-fits-all manner. It's just not even possible in this country. Like, I'm sorry, it's so geographically diverse. It just simply doesn't work. I emerged from my time on Capitol Hill more convinced that we need decentralization and federalism and less power in DC than ever before, because I really saw how, in a practical way, nothing that works for 48 states will ever work for Alaska, and Louisiana can't even really build anything that's not going to be knocked down by a hurricane in a few years. And so there are a lot of assumptions that are baked into the idea of a national policy that are fly in the face of reality so flagrantly after spending just a few minutes thinking about the issue at all.
I definitely agree. I actually highlighted that part in your piece where you had said that, because I agree. These big all-encompassing bills tend to not just not work because we're just so diverse. And what challenges people in each state is so different. I did also like what you just said there, because I experienced this in Wisconsin not too long ago, when Scott Walker was our governor, and he was actually cutting programs and things like that. And he won, the governorship with big margins, and everybody was all excited about him cutting. And then all of a sudden, when he started cutting it, you kind of got this clear indication that people were like, I want you to cut programs, just not that one, not the one that's helping me, not the one that I like. And so it falls back to the people and the constituents to allow them to shrink the size of government, knowing that there are going to be things that, that you like right now that also have to be shrunk. So I wanted to get back to that. But let's move on a little bit here. So you had talked about how the Democrats wanted to funnel money towards unions. The other thing that you talked about in your piece is that they wanted price controls. And you talked about how you were in a meeting with everybody, and you as a junior staffer, staying a little quiet and letting the more senior people talk. But they brought up the price controls, and you just kind of mentioned that price controls, create shortages, and that everybody had just a complete blank stare looking back at you. Kind of, if you could, just explain, what was that meeting like? And was there anyone else in that meeting that agreed with you, that followed up? I mean, that's a pretty scary thought, because it's such a simple concept that most people understand. And yet, if these are people writing the laws and they're staring at you completely blank, that's a scary thought for me.
Yeah. The responses would be awkward and yes. It was rather shocking in the moment, but it was, I should be clear, it was the Democrats I'm talking about, those staffers on that side of the aisle who were sort of casually throwing around. It's like, well, we want rate regulation, which is broadband speak for price controls. And we were pushing back in sort of these esoteric ways where it was like, well, maybe we need to allow some price flexibility on this because of this, and we need to allow some price flexibility here. And well, maybe we should let the states determine what their own rates should be and not dictate nationally. There was like a federalism argument. There was all this stuff. And eventually I just kind of blurted out. I was like, well, price controls in general are just bad because they create shortages. And there was the longest silence that we ever had in any of these negotiations followed. And I was genuinely confused because I knew these people. One of the reasons I'd been so intimidated by them, and I was 24 and just had a bachelor's degree. It's like a lot of them had masters in public policy. A lot of them had gone to the Princeton School of Government. I think it's the Woodrow Wilson School of Public Policy. It's literally named after him. And yes, it is ideologically in his tradition where he thinks that he thought that bureaucrats in DC should dictate the prices of everything for everyone. But it in one sense, it radicalized me in that, oh, wow, we really don't have economically literate people writing a lot of public policy, nor do we have economically literate people teaching public policy. That was one revelation. But the other one was that, yes, people did agree with me on the Republican side. They read their Milton Friedman, some of them. Even if they weren't true believers like me, they were certainly inclined to that point of view. Or at the very least, they were also young bachelor's degree holders like myself who hadn't really taken an economics class, who were hearing it for the first time and thought, oh yeah, that makes sense, just because of their disposition. So, ultimately, using that argument, we were able to keep it out of the bill, and even got something included that said that the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, which administers this program, I know it's a mouthful, and we'll call it NTIA for the duration here, wouldn't be allowed to set any rates for broadband service because price fixing, and they, at the very least, they could not possibly have enough information. Hayek pointed this out almost 100 years ago, but for the uninitiated, you cannot possibly have enough information as a bureaucrat sitting in DC to know what all the pressures that will determine the actual value of something for a customer are on the ground, and certainly not in the very far-flung places of America. So we said, all right, technically the door is open. States could pass rate regulation if they wanted to, but we're going to leave it out. We're going to prevent the federal government from fixing any prices. This is where the Biden administration then departed from the letter and spirit of the law when they actually implemented the program. So after it had passed and after it had been signed, the bureaucrats who administered it then came up with a scoring criteria where they would score each state's program that they would have to design to get their grants, their block grant, that they were going to in turn sub-grant to the ISPs trying to expand broadband service. And in the scoring criteria, they gave higher points to states that regulated rates for broadband service. And as a matter of fact, this was the case in the Commonwealth of Virginia, they straight up refused to release the money to states that wouldn't set prices. Virginia wrote an excellent essay, I should say, a good economics paper on why fixing prices was going to be ultimately detrimental to the goal they were trying to achieve. It would discourage any private sector provider from joining because they would be locked into a price, regardless of inflation or anything, for years into the future. And as you say, we keep coming back to the well on a lot of these programs, even if they are supposed to be a one-time spend. Frankly, it could have been into the 2040s. They were locked into a certain price point, totally immune to what's going on in the market. When it comes to most goods, people can sort of conceptualize why price fixing is bad, right? If you're forced to sell something for less than it is worth, well, you're going to run out, right? This is what happened to gasoline in the 70s, right? There were government price controls on how much you could charge for gas. Demand for gas went up because the population was rising, people were still using it, and its supply was actually getting scarce, right? So the price should have gone up because the supply had been restricted by OPEC. Because when the price is higher, the people to whom it's truly worth it to buy are willing to spend the money, and people for whom it's more of a luxury, well, they have to husband their resources more carefully, and so that sort of dictates the whole supply and demand interchange there. And I don't think I'm explaining anything new to the listeners of this podcast, but for broadband service, it's a little less intuitive because it's an intangible service. It's not a good flying off a store shelf. But what charging a market rate does for a private sector ISP is it enables them to have the money they need for cybersecurity, for network upgrades, for improving service over time. And again, when those storms come through Louisiana, you got to put the poles back up. You got to reattach the fiber. Damage happens to the network that you have to fix from time to time, as I'm sure many people are aware from having internet service outages for sometimes days at a time that they get frustrated with the ISP over. But charging a market rate and actually being able to turn a profit on delivering internet service is what enables ISPs to have the capital to respond to those situations and ensure the smooth service and resumption of service over time. So fixing the price, having the government dictate to them what they can charge for it, is a recipe for bankruptcy and is going to prevent anybody who had any real experience in delivering internet service from even taking part of the program in the first place. And instead, they were just going to have to circle the wagons around the market share they already had, and the GONs were going to swoop in on the others.
Sure. So in essence, they decided to in implementing to bribe the states with our money in order to get what they wanted that they couldn't get in the bill creating process. Did I sum that up pretty good?
I mean, I wouldn't say bribe. I would say blackmail. I mean, they were
blackmail, definitely
getting the money to which they were legally entitled. I mean, it was frankly illegal what they tried to do. Eventually, they came to an accommodation. I think Virginia made a concession, and ultimately it turned out mostly okay. But there's a lot of price controls that have been added to the program by a lot of states around the country, and we're going to see a lot of failure in a lot of ways through this program because of it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we got to start wrapping it up here. So tell us quickly kind of with all these price controls that they tried to implement and all this extra stuff in the end, what's the state of this bill now? Kind of where does it sit 3 years later? Zero homes have been connected. They've spent millions of dollars. Kind of where is it sitting today?
Well, it's sitting stifled under a pile of bureaucratic regulations that have been dumped on top of it by the Biden NTIA. The administration is going to change. We're going to see new people in the Trump NTIA. There's a chance we'll see some of this rolled back. We'll see some more free market principles implemented depending on who gets put in. I think it's quite likely. Is it going to reverse the damage that's already been done by these states who have already designed their plans and had them approved? No, that's not possible at this point. Although some states might make some changes at the last minute. The truth is, just 2 days ago, Texas was the 50th and final state to finish its approval process for its broadband plan. So now all 50 states have a plan on the books for how they're going to expand broadband. A lot of them have some pretty terrible stuff in them. I would look especially at California, look at Rhode Island, New York. It's very much top-down mandates, price controls, government-owned networks galore. But there are some bright spots. And a lot of it is actually having to work around what the administration was doing rather than cooperatively with them. So it was very difficult for states to take on the challenge of including any free market principles in their broadband programs at all. But I would say Tennessee, Louisiana have done a pretty good job. I think Florida had some good pre-existing laws that are going to help them here, especially governing how government-owned networks work. they're allowing a lot more flexibility on price. So I should mention Virginia too. There's a ability to respond to market changes in the future that NTIA eventually was forced to sign off on. And there's better competition enabled between private sector ISPs rather than unfair competition between government-owned networks and private sector ISPs in states like those, and Oklahoma. So I would say keep an eye on what happens in Tennessee, Louisiana, Florida, Virginia, and Oklahoma versus what happens in New York, Rhode Island, New Jersey, California, Illinois. And I think the results will speak for themselves.
Yeah, definitely. One good thing about having the different states and the different ways that they go about things is we definitely have a comparison to watch how they do things. So, all right. We'll definitely have to look at that. I got one last question for you. This is something I ask everybody. So if you had, that magic wand, if you had the power to make one change to move us closer to liberty or to open people's eyes for liberty, what is something that you would do?
I would wave the wand and magically make everybody understand that price controls create shortages, especially Capitol Hill staffers, and encourage more liberty-minded people to get involved and seek jobs in Capitol Hill, because you're going to have to check your ego at the door and you're going to have to do what your boss wants you to no matter what. But if we can have more people with the right principles looking at this the right way, we can guide policy, even if it's not perfect, in a much better direction. That's what I tried to do while I was in the Hill. I think we had some successes and some failures, but there were way too few of us, and we need a lot more.
All right. That's a good one. Definitely. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find more of your work?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I work for Americans for Tax Reform, which is Grover Norquist's wonderful outlet in Washington, D.C., where we've been leading the charge on shrinking government down to the size it can be drowned in a bathtub since 1986. And you can find my work at atr.org or follow me on Twitter, which is now called X, I guess. And it's at Irwin, that's E as in Edward, RWIN 1854. That's the year the Republican Party was founded. At Irwin 1854, all my work will be posted there. And you can find this piece in National Review, along with others I've written on the transgender debate in Maine. You can find articles I've written in Real Clear and Town Hall and The Hill, a few other outlets, but I will continue to be pumping them out. So keep an eye on the Twitter.
So, awesome. Well, I'll definitely have some of those in the show notes. Definitely your Twitter handle. I hate calling it X, so I keep calling it Twitter, but I'll definitely include that as well.
I mean, tweet is just such a useful verb. You can't not use that.
Right. It just doesn't work. Well, thank you very much, James, for joining us today and for being insightful, and just letting us know some of the craziness that happens, on Capitol Hill. It's been very insightful for us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, and have a great night.
Yeah. Well, all you Liberty listeners, please go check out James' work. And while you're at it, hop on over to goodmorningliberty.us, become a member of the Fed Haters Club. If you become a member, you get to hang out with me, with Nate, with Charlie, and the whole group of liberty-loving people. So go check all that out. All right. And again, definitely go check out James's work. He's got great insight into kind of the belly of the beast, and it's good for us to know. So if you do all that, I promise, I'm going to be back next time with another exciting person that you all need to know. Until then, remember, you own your choices, each and every one. So make some good ones.
No, it's not your imagination. I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. Same cost, smaller package. How rampant is this now? Merriam-Webster's dictionary has added the word shrinkflation. Official definition, the practice of reducing a product's amount or volume per unit while continuing to offer it at the same price. That cereal box is thinner. Fewer chips, more air in that bag. Fewer pills in the bottle. Shop smart for brands you want the way you shop around for the cheapest gasoline. Price per gallon is posted right there on the sign, and you'll find unit price, possibly in smaller print, right next to the item price in the supermarket. How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks on the blog at andyoucanquoteme.com.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
The latest episode of Free Talk Live continues with Hour 3 up next after the news here at listen.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. The Israeli Security Cabinet has approved a ceasefire deal with the militant group Hezbollah in Lebanon after it was presented by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It represents a major breakthrough in efforts to avert a wider war in the region. Netanyahu said the ceasefire is necessary to refocus attention on the Palestinian militant group Hamas in the Gaza Strip and the threat posed by Iran. The United Nations has ordered the evacuation of some of its key staff from Haiti as clashes between armed gangs and the police intensify. In the last few days, the UN has reported a major escalation of violence in the capital that's left scores dead and thousands displaced. Jody Jacobs reports from the United Nations in New York.
The main international airport in Port-au-Prince has been closed after commercial flights were hit by gunfire while landing and taking off earlier this month. Most foreign embassies are now also closed. Some 400 UN-backed security teams are on the ground, comprising mostly of Kenyan police. But this has done little to quell the tensions. The Haitian government, backed by the United States, is now calling on the UN Security Council to authorize a full-scale peacekeeping operation, a move opposed by Russia and China.
US health insurance could soon have to offer coverage of weight loss drugs under proposals from the Biden administration. The new rules would force Medicare and Medicaid, that's state and federal insurance programs, to provide the medication to Americans considered obese. US correspondent Sally Patterson reports.
More than 40% of Americans are considered obese. That's according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which warns obesity puts people at risk of heart disease, diabetes, and some cancers. New proposals would expand access to insurance-covered weight loss drugs and make medicine like Ozempic affordable for many people for the first time. But when Donald Trump takes over as president early next year, plans could be disrupted. His nominee to lead the health department, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., has railed against Ozempic's popularity, pushing for a healthy lifestyle instead.
Kyiv has requested a meeting of the NATO-Ukraine Council following Russia's use of a new hypersonic ballistic missile. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that more air defence systems are needed from its allies. William Denslow reports from Brussels.
According to a NATO official, Tuesday's meeting will be at the ambassadorial level. Moscow has vowed to continue testing its new missile technology that it says is in retaliation for Kyiv's use of US and UK missiles that have hit targets in Russian territory. NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte says the military alliance needs to strengthen its own deterrence and defence and change the trajectory of the conflict. William Denslow, Brussels.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking in more detail today at the threat from President Vladimir Putin of Russia to ramp up production of new hypersonic missiles that he says he now needs after President Biden gave the Ukrainians approval to use US-supplied weapons without restraint, allowing Attacker missiles to be used against targets on Russian soil. In Western Europe, governments are worried about possible reprisals from Moscow, where the Kremlin has once again revised its its nuclear posture. But Russia analyst Keir Giles, a senior consulting fellow at Chatham House in London, is urging the West to damp down the saber rattling.
Ordinarily, I'm the one that's ringing the alarm bells. I'm the one that's talking about the threat from Russia, how unprepared we are to defend ourselves, and how we need to get ready for something terrifying coming down the track. But in this particular case, actually, I think it's overdoing it. I think this is alarmist, and unfortunately, the language that we're hearing is exactly what Russia wants us to hear. Because the saber rattling, as you call it, is designed to have this production of this fear, uncertainty, and doubt. We should be calm and sober when we're looking at the problems are, but things have moved on since these threats of a cyber Pearl Harbor a decade ago.
That threat of hybrid warfare by the Russians is definitely a concern. The US warned allies about it last week after 2 undersea cables were severed in the Baltic, for which Russia denies all responsibility. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our main news again. The Israeli Security Cabinet has approved a ceasefire deal with the militant group Hezbollah in Lebanon. The UN has ordered the evacuation of some of its key staff from Haiti as clashes between armed gangs and the police intensify. And US health insurance could soon have to offer coverage of weight loss drugs under proposals from the Biden administration. And that's the latest feature story news. Kate Fisher reporting.
A man thanks God he's not sexually attracted to children, and Popeye's home is burglarized. Week in and week out, you come back like a housebroken Pomeranian, loyal to the bitter end. Good boy. This is the Onion Week in Review. Georgia's Cobb County Evangelical Hospital held its 5th annual Walk to Cure Gayness today, reportedly drawing thousands of participants to raise funds that would cure sufferers of their homosexuality and make gayness a thing of the past. Hospital administrators told reporters that funding from the walk would go into providing new state-of-the-art gayness treatment equipment, along with remodeling the hospital's physical therapy center, which has spent nearly 14 years reteaching gay men how to walk properly.
Oh God, I was a goner. But as you can see, I'm now happily married to a woman, and as of next month, I will have been in full remission for 2 whole years. I'm just so very, very happy. Everything's really good in my life.
This is the Onion News Network.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Hey, what's up, all of our liberty-loving friends? This is another fantastic episode of Liberty at Night with Nate and Charlie on the Free Talk Live Network, coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee, and we are about to get right into Dumb Bleep of the Week. What's Dumb Bleep of the Week, and what does it mean? I don't know. It rhymes. Sounds pretty cool. We've been doing it for a few years now. We throw together about 10 of the stupidest, dumbest things that happened in politics over the last week, and in the live group, the Fed Haters Club, they get together and they vote for which one was in fact the dumbest. We call it, yes, Dumb Bleep of the Week. Representative Jamal Bowman is sounding the alarm on something very important to everyone. You see, I can still use the sounding the alarm joke because of the fire alarm thing.
Yep.
Just so you guys know. This is super important, by the way. Star Wars, they're going to make a new trilogy. Which, my God, why? Stop. Please stop doing this.
Because people will watch it.
Can it get any worse? That's what I want to know. Can it get worse?
This is episodes 10, 11, and 12.
So here's what here's what Jamal Bowman had to say, Charlie. Go ahead.
All right. If the lead Jedi is not a black man, I ain't messing with y'all. Y'all not about to make 12 Star Wars and have all white leads for all 12. Y'all wildin' with that. And I hate to say that I would not watch and will spend the rest of my days denouncing this franchise that I have loved forever. The new Jedi Order better be multicultural with a black super powerful lead. We ain't playing, y'all.
So are we wilding? That's what I want to know. Who's doing the wilding here?
The people who won't put black people in movies.
Exactly. Yeah. That is the definition of wildin'. I was wondering what that is, but that's, well, there's a wilding. Wilding, okay. It's a verb. You're wilding. I don't know why this is important to some people, but I do have to tell you that Star Wars just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And I don't know why you would care whether or not the leads are black, but let's just go ahead and do it. Let's just go ahead and do that. Who cares? And also, there's been some freaking Sam Jackson. You know Sam Jackson. You ever heard of him?
Samuel L. Jackson.
Samuel L. Jackson's his given name, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure he was in some of them. I mean, that's a pretty big lead. But I guess it's not the main character. And what about that dude in the new ones? You know, the pilot. What was his name? Anyone know that guy's name?
And apparently, I don't know if you remember this or not, but according to Charlie Murphy,
Finn. Yeah, thank you.
According to Charlie Murphy, Samuel L. Jackson's pretty black.
He's pretty. Yeah, he is.
Yeah,
he's pretty black.
According to Eddie and Charlie Murphy. So,
all right, a little bit more racism to cap the racism segment off. Dumb Bleep number 4 with a fun one. We've got Representative Jasmine Crockett.
We didn't even talk. That's a good point, Big Gus. We didn't even talk about Yoda being green.
Yeah,
I mean, who does Yoda
That's
represent?
multicultural. Come on.
Well, who does he represent? There's no green people.
And I mean,
you're just going to make up a character that's a prominent movie figure.
Darth Vader, technically, kind of was James Earl Jones, just not when his, not when his head was off. They didn't. I'm pretty sure I don't remember them using James Earl Jones for that.
And he seems to be prominent and powerful.
Yeah. Very powerful.
Just with dark magic.
Bad powers. Oh, that's why. That's okay. The bad guy was black. I gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Jasmine Crockett, she wildin'. Let's hear what she had to say.
It's because you can then misuse words like oppression. There has been no oppression for the white man in this country. You tell me which white men were dragged out of their homes. You tell me which one of them got dragged all the way across an ocean and told that you are going to go and work. We are going to steal your wives. We are going to rape your wives. That didn't happen. That is oppression. We didn't ask to be here. We're not the same migrants that y'all constantly come up against. We didn't run away from home. We were stolen. So yeah, we are going to sit here and be offended when you want to sit here and act like, and don't let it escape you that it is white men on this side of the aisle telling us, people of color on this side of the aisle, that y'all are the ones being oppressed, that y'all are the ones that are being harmed.
Yeah, this is.
Let me tell you what.
This is, instead of Monopoly, we're playing a game called Victim.
Yes, Victimopoly.
Yeah. And so you got to stack up as many victims. Here's one of the problems, though, is that as far as my history books that I've read, and of course they're probably written by white men.
Yeah.
But the majority of black slaves that were brought across the ocean, they weren't stolen.
Well, they were stolen. They were just they were sold.
They were
and
they were sold.
They weren't exactly. Yeah, that's it's complicated. You're not supposed to talk about that.
Well, I don't think about, not a bunch of white men went over to Africa and then just started rounding up people without paying for them.
She starts off by talking about y'all weren't taken out of your homes and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you weren't either, Miss Crockett.
Right.
Okay. You put the person in front of me right now that suffered through slavery in America, and I will apologize to them right now. But all the examples she just gave are from freaking 200 years ago. I apologize for what they went through.
Oh, okay.
Not for my part in it.
Yeah.
Okay. But everything she's talking about is none of the people she's talking about went through that. Her examples are things that happened 250 years ago, 200 years ago, however many years ago it was. It doesn't matter. And so that's completely ridiculous.
The live group is saying she needs to sit down with Thomas Sowell.
But as some people in the group are pointing out, I mean, you can come up with plenty of examples of bad things that have happened to white people. Okay? Sure. There have been plenty of examples of that happening. You could go through, I think someone mentioned Ruby Ridge. You can talk about Daniel Shaver, and was that in Arizona where that happened, I think? You can mention plenty of things. But of course, I mean, you might not
talk about the fact that the Egyptians had Jewish slaves. I mean,
you can. Actually, but most people
for like 1,000 years,
most people have some type of history of slavery, whatever race they are, probably. So this type of victimhood thing and saying, the government for the last little bit has been set up to specifically help people of color in different ways.
And by
you
the
can't
way,
say that that's not the case.
This is a person of color who's in Congress.
In Congress, yeah.
So,
yeah.
Like, this baffles me, and I think Lil Wayne said it best. He said, no, he did. He goes, "What racism?" He's like, look at me. Look at me. What are you talking about?
That also, who else said? Morgan Freeman had that good clip on, I can't remember what network that was on.
But, this is what I consider, or what the experts would consider covert narcissism. It's like they want to be in a spotlight in a different way. And these people that consistently view themselves as perpetual victims, it's all to get attention. It's covert narcissism. It's the same thing. It's the same type of thing. It's a way that you can blame everyone else for your problems, never take accountability or responsibility for the decisions that you've made in your life.
In order to have power.
Mm-hmm. Because you're demanding, much like a fire alarm guy, that you get positions of power due to your victimhood status.
Really due to the victimhood status of people 200 years before you, which is even dumber.
It didn't even happen to you!
It's even dumber. Okay, that was number 4. We just called it racism. We had a few things in that one. Number 5 is bad econ. Of course, my favorite of the block today of the episode is bad econ. And so we'll make fun of a couple things real quick. I saw quite a few articles talking about this. NASA is close to capturing a platinum and plutonium asteroid worth $10 quintillion. It's a lot of dollars. So they're close to capturing this thing that is worth this much. It could turn every single one of us into billionaires, hypothetically. Last month, NASA sent the SpaceX Falcon Heavy rocket to go and probe 16 Psyche, one of the largest discovered M-type asteroids. Those are my favorite types.
I didn't realize my ex was in space.
The spacecraft will travel 2.2 billion.
You just got it?
The spacecraft will travel 2.2 billion miles. Most asteroids we know are made of rock and ice, but this one's special. It's composed of things that will greatly benefit our economy. And in this article, which I originally saw posted by Barstool Sports, and I was like, okay, maybe stick to sports. I see a lot of great sports takes from Barstool Sports. Okay. But this article did not mention any of the fact that this asteroid is not worth $10 quintillion. And I'll give you 2 reasons. Number 1, who the F is going to pay you the $10 quintillion for that asteroid?
Exactly.
So number 1, it's not worth that much. That all. It's worth what someone can pay for it. Like literally can pay for it. And so you could go the most that someone would possibly be a government, a whole government, say the U.S. was going to buy this asteroid and say how much it's worth. But then the other problem is mother freaking economics. Okay? The reason those resources are valuable is because they are scarce and limited. And so when you find an essentially unlimited supply of them, which space is full of, essentially an unlimited supply of these things, guess what happens to the value of it?
Goes way down.
Way down. Way down. And what sucks about this is things like this can actually get used to fund projects, by the way. They will say NASA needs however many billions of taxpayer dollars to go get this thing that is worth $10 quintillion. It's an easy money situation for the American people. Okay. And then a lot of people.
No, it's not to say that it wouldn't be profitable for a company like SpaceX to try to mine this thing and then slowly introduce, let's say, platinum to the market.
It would be worth $10 quintillion over the span of 1,000 years,
or a million years.
If they just mined it slowly for that amount of time.
Yeah. But if you're just going to helicopter in $10 quintillion into the world economy, well, everything else is going to drive the value down.
Yeah,
especially for platinum and plutonium, because those seem to be the 2 main elements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we could just print $10 quintillion. I mean, it's a good point. Why don't we just do that?
Yeah,
it would do essentially the same thing.
There needs to be some type of basic economics requirement education, and I'm not for requiring things, but I see it seems that the majority of people don't. And well, it's true. It doesn't seem. Most people don't understand just basic principles of
It's all supply and
how
demand.
supply and demand actually work.
And that is the first. In high school, we had
modern monetary asteroid theory.
In high school, we had a day where we talked about what economics was. Like, well, here's a word, it exists, what is it? And so we spent like a day talking about economics.
You heard the word supply and demand.
Supply and demand.
Yeah.
That day. And this is still like, you don't have to go into anything. Just talk about supply and demand. And then tell people you cannot get around supply and demand. It is a law that is as strong as gravity. You cannot get around it. I know in that movie Interstellar, they solved gravity or whatever, and these people think they're going to solve supply and demand too.
Yeah.
But you can't do it. So anyway, that's a pretty dumb take. One of my most...
And then they also, they try to spell it out for you that, essentially you can buy 1 quintillion pizzas, which would feed everyone on Earth 2 slices of pizza for almost 1.4 million years. Never take into account the fact that the price of pizza could change.
Yeah.
Never take into account that the number of people could change. And it's like, it's like those things don't exist. You're only taking today's numbers. And see, this is my biggest problem with communist. You take today's numbers and be like, look at all the stuff we could do. It's like, okay, well, yeah, for a day.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens when the prices change the next day or demand changes? Like, economics is really complicated. The reason why it's complicated is because there are trillions or quintillion,
probably 10 quintillion of them.
10 quintillion decisions being made basically every single day. You have, what's the average number of decisions that you make in a single day? I think it's somewhere like 500 or 1,000. It's ridiculous. Okay. Multiply that by 8 billion people and just think about how many decisions are being made by people every single day. And economics essentially is how do you account for that? Or how does that mode of exchange take place for these trillions, if not quintillion decisions being made?
The only answer is that it's made by all of those individuals acting freely with one another.
That's the only way that it's most efficient.
Mm-hmm.
Any other way is impossible.
Here's some government economics for you. You want to know why people fall for that asteroid thing? Well, here's an elected governor in the state of New York giving you a great economic example of how she saved you money. And she's going to tell you how she is saving the people of New York money.
During this process, from day one, I have made affordability for New York families a top priority. I always have, and I always will, fight to put more money in the pockets of everyday New Yorkers. That's why back in June, I stood up on behalf of hardworking families and simply said no. No to a new $15 congestion toll that at that particular time was just too much. Too many people were worrying about high costs, groceries, rent, childcare. These are real challenges for our families. And launching a toll that high really would have hurt a working mom or working dad trying to make ends meet, especially someone driving in from a transportation desert or far from outside the center of the city. As governor, it is my job to make decisions that take into account the needs of all working New Yorkers. So I made the decision to put the congestion pricing program on pause while we devise a different path forward. State law requires that congestion pricing simultaneously raise money for the MTA.
We don't have time for the whole video. The solution ends up being they used to have a $0 congestion pricing, and then they were going to make it 15. And she decided to save everyone money by making it $9 instead. And so what used to be 0 turned into 15, but now she saved you money because it's $9 instead. And yes, it is surge pricing. Thank you, Amanda. That was one of the, I believe we made that point in one episode a while back. That was funny. They were using that. So she says later on that she's saving you 40%. She's saving you 40% on something that you used to not have to pay in the first place. But now, thank you, Governor Hochul, for saving us money. We really appreciate that.
That's great.
That's great. And that's government girl math for you.
I did some math because I was very wrong. I severely underestimated. The average adult makes about 35,000 mostly conscious decisions every day. I'm not going to talk about subconscious decisions.
Yeah.
We're talking about active decisions. Okay. That is 280 trillion decisions a day on average between all the humans in the world.
That's a lot.
And when you multiply that by the month, you're looking at 8 quintillion decisions per month.
Well, we weren't too far off. We said 10 quintillion. We're pretty close.
We underestimated by a few quintillion.
No, we said 10. We said more. We overestimated.
Well, we said 10 quintillion a day.
Yeah. Okay. So we got that. That's a lot of decisions. That's too many. We're going to talk about.
Well, what my point was is that's what makes economics complicated, but you can simplify it. Like the basic simplification of understanding supply and demand is it is the most robust system known to man, by the way. Imagine trying to make a computer make all of these decisions. It can't.
Yeah.
Right now. Now, maybe one day it could with AI and quantum computing. Who knows? But you're thinking about accounting for roughly 300 trillion decisions a day. Think about that.
Yeah.
And almost all of those decisions, by the way, have to do with economics. I don't care if you're brushing your teeth or you're using the bathroom or you're sleeping in a bed. It doesn't. Think about every single decision that you make involves economics.
All right, we're moving on to Dumb Bleep number 6 now.
I thought that was more exciting maybe than what it was.
Dumb Bleep number 6. We're going to talk about Alan Lichtman and his keys, mainly because of this exchange that happened between Cenk and Alan on the Piers Morgan show. This clip was going around being very viral this week. I wanted to tell you first off that this guy, Alan, has these keys to the White House, if you never heard of them before. There's 13 keys, okay? Now, he has used these 13 keys to be correct on 9 out of the last 10 presidential elections. This year is one of the years where he was not correct. So now it's 9 out of the last 11 presidential elections. And he has not accepted why he was wrong about this, but I wanted to tell you that there are 13 keys. If the incumbent party gets 8 of them, then they win. And he decided that they get 8 of them and they win. Actually, I think he decided they get 9 of them, and that Kamala Harris is going to win. Spoiler alert, he ends up saying that the reason they didn't work this year was because of the unprecedented explosion of disinformation on platforms like X, which is why they didn't work.
Yeah.
But I did want to go ahead and play you this clip if you haven't seen it. And first is Cenk just really laying into Alan here, who's in the middle. And then he just says some really stupid stuff. So it's the entitled...
the Harry Sissons guy?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's him. Pretty sure that's him.
Lord.
I know. He is a real person, though. Like, we kind of confirmed that. I sort of thought he was just fake.
I don't know. I mean, looking at the picture there, that could be AI generated.
It could be all AI. That's correct.
Don't blame the voters. I think, look, we could get into this discussion, but one, I think you're blaming the voters. I think that's a terrible idea. Look, I debated Professor Lichtman before. I told him his theories about the keys were absurd. I was right. He was wrong. I said he'd lose his keys.
No, you were
Couldn't
not
find
right,
them
and
before
I
the
was
election.
not wrong. And that's a cheap shot, and I won't stand for it.
Well, who won, brother?
You should not be
Who
taking
won?
cheap
Who
shots
won?
at me.
Who
You
won?
want to make your
You
point,
live
make your
in a
point.
total
Don't make it
world of
personal.
denial.
I read your own followers' comments, and they all trashed you, every one of them, and supported me. So
Yeah,
quiet
right,
with
right.
your personal
Yeah,
attacks.
come find out again.
Make whatever point you want.
Yeah.
Don't
Look,
make it
you
personal.
don't know anything. You don't know
You
anything.
attacked me
You
personally.
You're so deluded.
Oh, right. I've only been a professor for 51 years.
On this program,
published
I've never been
13
able
books.
to finish a
How
thought.
many books have you published? No, because you're personally attacking me again. Say whatever you want, but I'm not going to stand for
brother,
personal
you got it
attacks.
wrong.
Say
you were
whatever you want.
preposterously and stupidly wrong. So, okay, all right. Can I just
Don't
finish
call
a thought
stupid.
ever on this show?
No, not if you're
Okay,
personally
well,
I
you
admitted
proved it.
I was wrong.
Don't you
I don't
ever
need
call
you to
him
call me
stupid.
stupid.
Okay.
Can I just say,
What
it's
kind
great
of
to see
nonsense
you
is that?
Democrats all getting
Who
along
taught
so
you
well.
manners?
It's lovely to see a post-election harmony as you all come together again.
Hey, Alan, Hey, Alan, you deserve a tall glass of shut-up juice, so can you just shut up for a second? And let someone who knows what they're doing.
So right here, okay? You're so right. So unified right now. You want, so I will not sit here and stand for personal attacks, for blasphemy against me. You don't need to do that. You don't
blasphemy against you? Who the hell are you? Are you Jesus Christ, you loser? Okay, can I just give a...
All right, so we got to the blasphemy section of the thing. So, blasphemy.
Some of you have wanted to support Free Talk Live's mission on a monthly basis, but don't want to support Patreon. Now we have an alternative that also helps our premier streaming platform, Odyssey. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join at the top of the channel. You can subscribe for $5 per month, and unlike other subscription services, Odyssey adds their processing fee on top, so it'll cost a little over $5 per month, but Free Talk Live will receive the entire amount you pledged. Higher donation tiers are available if you're feeling so inspired. You'll get a special membership badge that's visible in the Odyssey chat room, and if we get enough supporters, we may enable members-only chat. This new subscription method is a great way to decentralize our direct listener support away from just Patreon and also support a libertarian-run business, Odyssey. Please visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join to subscribe to our Odyssey channel and help support spreading our message around the planet. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join today.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. U.S. President Joe Biden has confirmed a ceasefire agreement has been reached between Israel and the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah.
Under the deal reached today, effective at 4 a.m. tomorrow local time, the fighting across the Lebanese-Israeli border will end.
Thousands of people have been killed and more than 1 million displaced in the latest round of the conflict, which began following the October 7th attacks by Hamas in Israel. The agreement would require Israeli troops to withdraw from southern Lebanon and Hezbollah to move its forces north of the Litani River, creating a buffer zone at the border of northern Israel. The Lebanese government would also move its forces into the region, which has long been controlled by Hezbollah. If the ceasefire holds, it will be a diplomatic victory for the U.S. president in the waning days of his administration and would raise hopes that a ceasefire is possible in the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. Mexico's president has threatened to retaliate to Donald Trump's proposed 25% tariffs targeting the country. FSN's correspondent Mitch McCann reports.
In an evening social media post, Donald Trump revealed he plans to slap 25% tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada to the US after he's sworn in as the country's 47th president. Mr. Trump posted, "As everyone is aware, thousands of people are pouring through Mexico and Canada, bringing crime and drugs at levels never seen before." The Associated Press reports that Mexico's president has suggested that her country could retaliate with tariffs of its own, and reiterated that Mexico has done a lot to stem the flow of migrants. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he spoke to Mr. Trump on the phone, describing it as a good call. In a separate post, the president-elect threatened an additional 10% tariff on all products from China, accusing it of shipping illegal drugs to America. Mitch McCann, New York.
U.S. health insurance could soon have to offer coverage of weight loss drugs under new proposals from the Biden administration. FSN's Sally Patterson reports.
More than 40% of Americans are considered obese. That's according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which warns obesity puts people at risk of heart disease, diabetes, and some cancers. New proposals would expand access to insurance-covered weight loss drugs and make medicine like Ozempic affordable for many people for the first time. Proposals from the Biden administration would expand coverage for around 7.4 million Americans who use Medicare and Medicaid. But when Donald Trump takes over as president early next year, plans could be disrupted. His nominee to lead the health department, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., has railed against Ozempic's popularity, pushing for a healthy lifestyle instead.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
Now, what really made me decide this was so dumb is just this entitled nature of this elite class of people who think they're elite, very elite and very in tune, and that they know everything. He does these, what do you call them, like appeals to authority or whatever those the flags people throw in arguments. He does all these things where like, I've published 13 books. How many books have you published? I've been in academia for 51 years. How long have you been doing it? And then for Cenk to sit there and say these terrible things about this person who was so wrong and is still denying the reason he was wrong, he says, I won't stand for this blasphemy against me. Like he's some kind of Christ-like, God-like figure in this and knows so much more than ever. Like, this is exactly why they lost the election right here, is that this dude right here is a great example. And I hope they all stay like this, too. I mean, I would like for them to just always lose.
This is the religious element we always talk about, you know? Like, this is their religion for them. And here's what happens when we talk about the snake eating its own tail. This is what happens, you know? And they're going to continue to devolve because it's not sustainable. It's just not sustainable.
So one thing that there's a few things in here I wanted to show you guys, like the keys, just so you know what they mean by keys are party mandate, no serious contest for the incumbent party nomination. Let's see, the incumbent party is the sitting president, third party, no significant third party campaign. How's the short-term economy doing? Is it doing well? Long-term economy, is that doing well? The incumbent administration affects major changes in national policy. There's no social unrest, no major scandals, no major failures in foreign or military affairs, achieves major success in foreign and military affairs. The incumbent party candidate is charismatic or a national hero, or the challenging party is not charismatic or a national hero. So, by the way, just to give you an example of some of these keys, he decided that Biden had achieved major success in foreign and military affairs, that Biden had not had any major failures in foreign and military affairs, said that Biden had not had any major scandals at all, said that he had done major changes in national policy. It just says affects major changes. It doesn't say if they're changes that people hate. It just says, oh, did he affect major changes? Then he says the long-term economy, well, it's doing great because GDP growth is up. GDP, people like it when it's up. And so therefore, people see the long-term economy is doing great. And so instead of questioning whether or not he's wrong about any of these things, he's decided that it's because of disinformation. Because if only the American people understood that the GDP growth was more than people expected, then they would have felt better about whether or not they could afford their groceries. And that really has been some of the cries from the left, is that people just didn't understand how good the economy is. Look at the GDP. You know, look, we got inflation down to 2% it is right now. And they don't accept the fact that that's not what people care about. You know what people do care about? Is that something like median weekly real take-home earnings, real after inflation, are still down during the time that Biden has been in office. And that's median weekly salaries, stuff like that's down. After inflation, they were up 7% while Trump was in office. They're down like 1.6% while Biden's been in office. But he's like, well, the GDP's good. And so he decides to go instead that it's right-wing disinformation on X is the reason that he was wrong about this.
And this is like the video I sent you when that guy was talking about Pennsylvania. You know, like everything's good. It's like, but the economy's great, but I keep hearing about egg prices. He's like, yeah, it's good. But here's what people complained about, saying it's not good. It's like they have no concept
of what actual people are going through.
Of what actual people are going through. And then they sit from their moral high ground telling you why you're still wrong, even though you're experiencing something completely different. They gaslight you.
It reminds me of, this is added into this, what William Shatner was saying on Bill Maher's program. He just didn't understand why Kamala lost. Couldn't figure it out. There's just no way that she could have lost this election. And so I actually got a little uncomfortable with some of the stupid stuff he said, but here we go. Dang it, Captain Kirk, don't ruin my childhood.
I don't know why the Democrats lost. I don't understand why the Democrats lost.
Well, people will be writing books about it for years, many reasons. Part of it was, Biden should not have stayed on so long.
That I understand. But inflation, prices have come down, the economy is good. I mean, I don't know why they voted against her.
Well,
against the party.
I certainly could go on and on about that. But basically, she was not a great candidate, let's be honest. When they asked,
why isn't she a great candidate? She combined several trends of thought here. Black, woman.
That's not a candidate. Those are, that's identity politics. That's one of the.
I got so uncomfortable when I got that. Why is she not good?
She combined all these thoughts.
She's black. It's a trend of thought.
Oh, God. These
Good job.
people.
Oh, gosh.
At this point, I just think they're stupid. I
have a hard time saying it about William Shatner because he's a personal hero of mine, but whatever.
Still dumb.
Whatever. He's still my captain as long as he's...
How many we got left?
Acting. 2.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 things. We'll go real quick on this one. This one's making its rounds right now. Now, there's this article. Sorry, we'll have to blur out the bad words on here. Can't tell you what Joe Rogan said. He said...
What the F is this S?
WTF is this S? What he said. And it's an MSNBC article. Laken Riley's killer never stood a chance. So I was talking about the case. He was found guilty. He's going to get life in prison without the possibility of parole. And the article is Laken Riley's killer never stood a chance. No, I went and read the article just so you guys know, and it really said nothing really at all. It just described the fact that this guy was always going to get found guilty and that he opted for a bench trial and all that kind of stuff. And they talked about how there was a big political uproar and people were upset because he's an illegal immigrant and all that kind of stuff. The article title was pretty dumb. I'll just say that. The other dumb part about this was when I went on to MSNBC's page this morning to find this article so I could actually read the whole thing, the top left corner, which is like the very important part of the page, showed this article, Laken Riley's killer never stood a chance, and a picture of the guy, whatever his name is. I don't know his name, don't care really. And then they changed it after it started going around, and now it's the exact same article, but now it's called The Guilt of Laken Riley's Killer Was Never in Doubt, and it's a picture of Laken Riley up there at the top. Yep. And so it is clear that they apparently got the message on this. I don't know what they were trying to do with this article except for cause an uproar. And I just wanted to point out that they're getting spun off by Comcast. Might not even be called MSNBC anymore because they're not going to have the NBC tag ownership anymore. Yeah, a bunch of channels are, but they're one of them because they just lose money. Yeah,
isn't that something?
It's just kind of ridiculous. They talk about how the media was against the right wing, was against them, all this stuff. Also, they didn't mention any of the evidence in the article that was also against them, like DNA evidence, cell phone pings, all sorts of stuff like that, bloody jacket or whatever in the trash thing outside of where he was living, all sorts of stuff like that. I'm not sure what they were trying to do with this. Potentially make this guy into some type of a victim, but they failed, and especially failed when they decided to change the article title just to please people. Don't worry. The next one involves MSNBC as well. Oh, yeah, there's a new article right there, just so everyone knows. Since we're running out of time, I'm going to skip over reading the article and explaining all kinds of stuff, so we'll move on to number 8 now. One of them, a couple little short videos in here. Jennifer Rubin says Republicans want to kill your kids. Charlie, you're going to leave without saying goodbye?
I got to go.
Yeah?
Unfortunately, I have to go. Love you, bye.
Charlie's leaving. It's super important. See you later. Have a great day. I'll be gone when you get back. Thanks for saying bye to me.
Bye. Have a good Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving? I'm going to be back next week. I am going to celebrate Thanksgiving with my wife's family. Okay, first one here from Defiant L's. Jennifer Rubin, who writes for the Washington Post, says, Republicans want to kill your kids. There was a super short video of this going around. I did want to find a longer one so I could get some more context, because I didn't want to play the clip out of context and make sure that she was saying something that was super logical. And so instead, I play the whole context, and it's just as dumb, just so everyone knows. Here's a clip of her saying this.
You can't talk broad themes. You have to boil it down to nuts and bolts, and you have to be pithy. What do I mean by pithy? How about this? Republicans want to kill your kids. It's actually true. If you're going to oppose vaccinations, if you're going to stop breakthrough medical research, if you're going to allow minors and all sorts of people to get semi-automatic weapons, which they use to shoot up schools, well, then you are responsible for kids' health and death, unfortunately. It has to be that simple and that direct, and it has to be over and over and over.
There are so many ways you can go with this. I can talk about each thing that she just said. I first off just want to say that the party who's going to use Republicans want to kill your kids, their main talking point this entire year was that you should be able to kill your kids, and Republicans are trying to stop you from doing that. That's super weird. Not having an abortion conversation right now. I'm just saying that's a really dumb argument, considering the only thing Kamala Harris's entire platform was about was the right to kill your kids. And so that's super dumb, first off. She mentions a few things in here, like you're not going to be able to vaccinate your kids. Now, I don't know what RFK is going to do if he gets in there. I don't think there's a lot of ways to talk about this, because first off, it used to be the left who had more of a anti-vaccination streak to them in these big pharmaceutical companies that didn't have liability and were potentially causing problems and just trying to make money off of people. Okay. Thanks, Amanda. That's a good point. And so that's weird. I don't know exactly what RFK is going to do if he gets in there. I don't know if he's going to ban vaccinations or ban breakthrough medical treatments. But then she also makes this point that they're going to allow minors to get semi-auto assault weapons. I wish, but don't make them seem more base than they are, okay? I don't know what the heck she's talking about over here. But apparently the Democrats have laws that will prevent any minors from ever being able to come in contact with a weapon, I guess. They're going to be able to do that, just like they've done with drugs and all those other things. I'm going to move on from Rubin and move on to, this is still number 8. We're just talking about the media right now. I'll end it with this, with the fine folks over at Morning Joe. Now, I think what they've done is good. It is the right thing to do. However, it's too late. They went and had a meeting with Trump, and they decided they're going to reopen dialogue, and they're going to talk. They're going to talk to him instead of just shutting him out completely and talking about how he's Hitler, I guess. A lot of people are very upset about this. It's actually the right thing to do. The problem is they're only doing it because Kamala lost and they want to have access to the president, and possibly they're only doing it because they realized they've been lying about things for a long time and it's not working anymore. And so they want to try and do the right thing. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to work for them. I think it's way too late. I think the people that are fans of them are people who want to stay in their little silo and not ever hear anything good or any other sides of the story, and they just want to hear about how Trump is going to kill everyone. But here's their announcement that came earlier in the week that they went and met with him. We'll see what they have to say. Towards the end, there's something very important, but let's see what they had to say.
Over the past week, Joe and I have heard from so many people, from political leaders to regular citizens, deeply dismayed by several of President-elect Trump's cabinet selections, and they are scared. Last Thursday, we expressed our own concerns on this broadcast and even said we would appreciate the opportunity to speak with the president-elect himself. On Friday, we were given the opportunity to do just that. Joe and I went to Mar-a-Lago to meet personally with President-elect Trump. It was the first time we have seen him in 7 years.
Now, we talked about a lot of issues, including abortion, mass deportation, threats of political retribution against political opponents, and media outlets. We talked about that a good bit. And it's going to come as no surprise to anybody who watches this show, has watched it over the past year or over the past decade, that we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of issues, and we told him so.
What we did agree on was to restart communications. My father often spoke with world leaders with whom he and the United States profoundly disagreed. That's a task shared by reporters and commentators alike. We had not spoken to President Trump since March of 2020, other than a personal call Joe made to Trump on the morning after the attempt on his life in Butler, Pennsylvania. In this meeting, President Trump was cheerful, he was upbeat, he seemed interested in finding common ground with Democrats on some of the most divisive issues. And for those asking why we would go speak to the president-elect during such fraught times, especially between us, I guess I would ask back, why wouldn't we? 5 years of...
Okay. That's the point that I wanted to get to. For those asking why would we go speak to this person, why wouldn't we? I've got a lot of clips pulled up that I can play, but let me just summarize them for you. Trump is literally Hitler. Trump is a fascist dictator. Trump is an authoritarian, literally Hitler, fascist dictator that is going to lead to the deaths of who knows how many people. He's an awful, disgusting, incompetent person who should not be allowed to be the Hitlerian, authoritarian, fascist dictator of America. And they have been saying this for I don't know how many years now. Quite a long time. And what they really just admitted, because and I've seen people make some good points on this on CNN talking about this. I can't remember that. What's that guy's name? The Republican guy on CNN right now that seems to make a lot of good points. He's doing a good job. Can't remember his name right now, though. If you actually believe these things, I mean truly believed it, then you wouldn't go talk to the guy. You really wouldn't. I mean, they're not going to go talk to Putin. People were upset that Tucker went and talked to Putin. Well, they're saying that Trump is Hitler. I don't think they would go talk to Hitler. Yeah, Scott Jennings. Thank you, Magoo. That's right. Seen a lot of good clips of him. He does a good job. Yeah, the point is that they don't actually believe it. They know that they've just been saying it over and over again. And unfortunately for them, they have whittled their audience all the way down to people who just want to hear that all the time. There are so many different people you can listen to in the media, and you can find your person who's saying the thing that you want to hear all the time, which is that Trump is Hitler and we're all going to die if he gets into office. And I've said a whole bunch of times now that the media really, really sold out. They went all in on this election. The hyperbole of all hyperbole that we've never seen before. I actually don't know how they can go further unless they start calling people Stalin and Mao, which actually the Atlantic tried to do also, but that one didn't take off that much. That's the only way they could make it worse than Hitler. So I guess they did leave a couple levels that they could go further if they want to do that. They didn't go all the way. Yeah, the next step is actual violence. I don't know what they could possibly do in the next election when they spent all this time telling you about literally Hitler. And if he gets in here, we're not going to have democracy. Democracy is going to be gone. What are they going to do in the next election? Isn't that going to be awkward? There's a lot of clips out there of people saying that there won't be another election. Trump said you'll never have to vote again. He's going to be an authoritarian on day one. This is the end of democracy. We're not going to have the chance to vote again. This is our last chance. There are so many clips of this. And then anytime they have some sort of insane hyperbolic statements in 2028, we'll just be able to play clips of what they said in 2024 and the fact that none of the stuff was true. Unless it is true, in which case this clip will be super awkward. But I'll probably be gone by then, so who cares? So the dumb for this one really goes to the ridiculous media cope, and the fact that they have been lying to people so much for so long, and this is almost a white pill, but it's really screwed up MSNBC. Like they're out of here. I don't know what they're going to do. And what's really funny is when they try to turn a corner and do what you're supposed to do, which is, talk to whoever the elected leader is, people are extremely upset with them about that because that's not who their audience is. Why would you talk to Hitler? Those are the only people that watch them, is so they can hear them say Hitler. It's actually a good move they're making. It's just way too late. And it's after they lied to people for a long time. So they're screwed. Let me get to what the dump. This is the last one, by the way. There's just 8 today because I'm heading to Chattanooga. I'm getting out of here. Okay, so we're going to vote on these 8 things that we had today. Number 1 was the ATACMS, supplied and operated mainly by the United States to attack inside of Russia. That decision this week. Number 2, we have the ICC. There's so many ways to talk about the ICC, maybe them in general, but then also the response that the only reason they do this is because of anti-Semitism from all of those different countries. I don't know. I don't like crying anti-Semitism, racism, whatever it is when there are other plausible explanations for things. Number 3, that anti-terrorist nonprofit bill that the House passed. I don't know if it's actually going to become law. Number 4, racism. That had the Jasmine Crockett clip in it. That had Jamal Bowman talking about Star Wars and Al Sharpton talking about the worst thing about Trump's cabinet was that none of them were black. Number 5 was Bad Econ 101, where we talked about the $10 quintillion valuation on this asteroid that we have to go get. And also Kathy Hochul saving you money by charging you less money. Okay. Number 6 was Allen and his keys. It's not Allen key or key, just it's Allen and his keys. Number 7, the Laken Riley thing. Number 8, the mainstream media cope. That's what I named it. That's got Joe Scarborough and it's got Jennifer Rubin saying, basically, here's the strategy. Just tell everyone that Republicans want to kill their kids. Okay? So vote for us so you can kill your kids. That's the strategy. Let's get the votes in. All right, everyone. 1,416 episodes of Good Morning Liberty on your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends, your family member, the children, all those people. Tell your enemies. Tell people that you hate, that you haven't spoken to since high school, and you stopped talking to them because of politics after the election. Send this over to them, okay? Just to make them mad. I recommend you do it. I really do. You can go to our social media channels and hit share or like or comment on whatever it is that you want to share, like, or comment on. Repost some things. Go and do that. You can leave a rating and a review on your favorite podcast app. That's a good thing to do. And if you want to be involved in the voting process, you can go to joingml.com, and for as little as $7 a month, you can join, hang out with us every single day of the week when we want to. Throw in your own submissions for Dumb Bleep of the Week, and then we'll vote on them every single week. Looks like the winner is going to be Dumb Bleep number 4, Racism, which included Al Sharpton, Jamal Bowman, and Representative Jasmine Crockett. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us this week. Remember, you can find us every single day of the week on your favorite podcast app. Right now, we're called Liberty at Night, but every single day we are called Good Morning Liberty. 1,418 episodes strong so far. And you can watch each and every episode on our YouTube channel. Find our videos on the Rumble and Odyssey. But if you don't go do that, don't worry. We will be back again Tuesday night to do it all over again. Have a great Thanksgiving break. We'll see you then.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. Rising fees have made Bitcoin useless for purchases, but Dash continues to have fees less than 1 cent per transaction, and its features ensure Dash is undefeated as the most useful cryptocurrency in the marketplace. From a technical standpoint, Dash transactions are irreversible, and its network is protected from 51% attacks by their Chainlocks technology. There's no need to wait for a confirmation before considering a Dash transaction complete, so it's great for merchants. Dash is one of the oldest